All right, I think we're live. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes or anywhere else you want to share this with your friends and family. Tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearmsradio.tv. Tonight we are joined by Carrie Sloan of Stilettos and Shotguns and WeTheFemale.net. So it's been a few weeks since we've been on here. Andy, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you've been up to, if you've done any shooting, any of that good stuff, and what you have coming up over the next couple weeks.
Oh man, I haven't been to the range in a little while. Other than we went and shot some clays the other day, which that was a blast. Just a little bit different from handgun training and all that stuff. So I got my instructor cert here a few months ago. So I just want to stay sharp on shooting shotguns, so I don't look like a total fool when I go out with somebody that doesn't know. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you saw my banner on the bottom, Ice Fishing Champion. I tried ice fishing for the first time this last weekend. That was fun. It was interesting. Didn't catch absolutely nothing, but hey, it was cool. And next week we got a concealed carry class here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So if you're here in Albuquerque, come check us out. Practical defense training. That's about it.
Yeah, that should be a good class. Did you fall on the ice? I'm always when I was younger, I did some ice fishing up in Wisconsin, but that was a couple 100 pounds ago, a few years. So.
You know what we do, man. I mean, as gun guys, we always buy all the crap. So, I mean, I researched, went on YouTube, looked at a ton of videos, and then we went to the marina right by the lake, and I bought a little fishing pole that was like this big, and they're like, this is the best fishing pole ever. We bought shoe spikes and, heaters, and you name it. I'm way over prepared as usual. So
you mean, like a typical gun guy, you bought all of the equipment but didn't train?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Had no idea what the hell I was doing. I mean, I know how to fish, but I've never fished on 12 inches of ice, and listening to that ice crack underneath you for the first time, it's a different little sound, man. It's like, wow, this is a little weird, but the guy's like, dude, we could literally drive a diesel on top of that ice and it's not cracking. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm pretty heavy, man. What about you, Carrie? Have you ever ice fished?
No. Hell no.
Hey.
I don't like being cold. I live in Washington State, and when my daughter goes to college, I'm out. I'm moving. I literally want to be a sunbird. I want to live 6 months out of the year in Florida and 6 months out of the year in Arizona. Mm-hmm. So I am no. I don't like being cold. I'm over it. I so cannot wait to get that fuck out of here.
Oh no.
We have a sound bite. No.
Yeah.
No.
That is the official soundbite for this podcast. That's just going to be the first 2 minutes of intro looping out once we get this published and produced and all that good stuff. So Carrie, why don't you talk to us a little bit about some things that you do enjoy doing, specifically firearms, and give us a little bit of your background in the firearms industry and what has brought you to where you are at today with Stilettos and Shotguns and We the Female.
So I'm okay, but before we came on, you told me that we were talking about cocaine and hookers.
That's later. We got to bait them with the gun stuff.
Okay, that's the after show. Sorry,
yeah.
Mom, sorry.
And you can't have cocaine and hookers without guns. So, I mean, it all circles somewhere, right?
Well, yeah. So that's my retirement plan. So put a pin in that and I'll tell you guys about it. So I mean, I don't know where do you want me to start? Back in the day when I was a young girl.
Yeah. Maybe talk to us about the first time you went out and you shot and kind of where you are at now with We the Female and changing victim mentality through defensive mindset and situational awareness.
Sure. I shot as a kid. My grandfather was legit Wild West stuff. He was born and raised Midland, Odessa, Texas. He was my family had and I mean the real, not the bush kind of crap or any of that, but they settled there because they had hit some oil, and they certainly enough just to make a living on, right? Nothing to be wealthy or anything, but that's how they ended up there. My grandfather was certainly a maverick of his day. He was one of the first topless bar owners in Texas. Like, and by that I mean like pasties, right? And back in the 50s and 60s. So guns were always a part of my life around me, and they were always, everything was loaded, unlocked, and just everywhere, around the house. We didn't think anything of them. So I'd shot some shotguns and rifles as a kid, but and a revolver, but nothing semi-automatic, because he was Old West. I mean, he had them, but that was usually because he took them from people that owed him money, but that's a different story. That's a different podcast. But so he just hit my cord. So he being around them has never been a thing. So fast forward a few years, like maybe 30, and married my husband, who he's active duty, and so we've had guns around, and I have PTSD from my ex-husband, who beat the hell out of me, which is why I started We the Female. I'm a domestic violence survivor. And lots of things that we'll get into some of this, I'm sure. But one of the things that helped with the nightmares, mitigating the nightmares, was we bought a shotgun and put it on a rail just beside my bed. So I could literally just reach down and grab it. And just knowing that I had that there helped to a little bit with the nightmares. So I've always been pro 2A. I'm actually very much a hardline constitutionalist. I'm anti-political party completely. And if you follow me on social media at all, you would know, I mean, you see it, because I call Steve Fisher just texted me. So if he's watching this, hey, Steve.
Oh yeah. You're missing the comments in the chat.
Am I?
Yeah.
In the comments being
yes. What's up, Steve?
Oh, is he talking about my hair? He likes, I'm not seeing it on there. I don't see the comments on there. So, I mean, I see comments, but not Steve's. Anyway, that started kind of the gun ownership in the house. Went and bought my first pistol, which was my everyday carry. Her name is Abigail Adams. I carry a P238. And she's a great little 380. People tease me about it, carrying a 380, and then they shoot it. And if you've ever shot a 238, you would know that they're pretty, like, most of them, like my big guys, are like, and then they shoot, they're like, oh, this is really nice. I'm like, yeah. So, that's kind of my background, I guess, really. So, we have here in Washington State, 1639. I mean, if you're in the gun community at all, and not living under a rock, you've heard of that. It made national news. It was very, very controversial and very restrictive. And the short of that is I spoke out against it as a domestic violence victim, particularly the mental health background check that happens when you sign your 4473, which I didn't know what that was a year ago. I mean, I didn't know what the name of it was or what they call it. And now when you sign that here, it's an automatic waiver of your HIPAA rights, your medical records. So that So the state has complete access to all of your medical records, including your mental health records. And it's completely, they can look at anything they want. They can look as much as they want. There's the mental health authority is who looks at it. Well, we don't even know what that is. There's no criteria for what they'll approve, not approve, so medications that are used for other things that are classified as antidepressants can get you denied. But of course, the big one being PTSD, which is a buzzword for gun control, as we know, and typically related to veterans. But it's also a big thing for domestic. Well, everybody, right? I mean, really, anybody can have PTSD from something. But one of the hidden components of that is domestic violence, and a lot of people don't talk about that. So that I am sitting literally in a position every day now, because that is on my medical record from 13 years ago, where I could walk in and be denied a firearm because it's there. Now it's not happened yet, fortunately, but that it could. I won't go to my doctor and take medications now. Like I won't take sleeping meds or anxiety meds or any of that kind of stuff, because I can't risk that. So we have this whole situation now where you have people, I mean, there's many, many reasons why red flag laws are bad, or these type of laws are bad, particularly for domestic violence victims. But more than anything, with something like this, you end up in a situation where people aren't going to go get the health care that they need, mental health care that they need, because they don't want to be this on their record or be denied, or then be put into the higher incident for red flagging kind of thing. Because let's be realistic, we know that that's going to happen. So that's it's creating a situation that they're trying to say that they're mitigating, and that started cluing into. So I've been a teacher of situational awareness, defensive mindset for a while. I can do threat assessment, those types of things, and but as I started teaching these classes and I started seeing all of these things, I started watching all of these connections to this culture of victim mentality that we have, which interestingly enough is never denied by anybody in any political party. Like, everybody agrees we all have this culture of victim mentality. But what I started noticing is how through social media, politicians actually use social media, I believe. And it's this victim mentality is continued to be perpetuated and almost encouraged and supported through social media and law, legislation, and particularly gun control legislation. So they keep telling us that they want us, that they're enacting these laws to keep us safe, particularly with domestic violence, right? They tell you hide in the closet till they get there, whatever, right? All of these, I could go on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and so I started making all these connections. I'm like, okay, so they're continuing to cultivate and perpetuate victim mentality, particularly among women and domestic violence survivors. And with the more of this legislation they keep putting in place, this is going to continue. How do we break that? We break that through educating people, particularly women, because women are a powerful force at home. Right? We have more of an influence, because y'all know who's running the house at home. Let's be realistic, gentlemen.
No argument here.
Happy wife, happy life. Come
That's
on,
right. Absolutely.
So, and if Steve is watching, he's like, that's why I'm single. Mr. Crotchety, he's my favorite crotchety old man.
Mm-hmm.
So when we can get in through these types of classes and teach, we can start to break the culture of victim mentality through teaching them defensive mindset. Some of the things I've learned in the classes that I taught were women say, yeah, when I was out, my husband tells me I'm overreacting or I'm being paranoid, right? Because we're taught to trust our instincts. And that's pretty common, particularly among our culture, right? We tend to be a little bit more aware always as gun owners. But women are taught that, right? Always trust your instinct. That we call them the woman feelers on the back of the neck, right? But then then it's dismissed, and then we're taught that we're overreacting or paranoid. So I really get in, and I told one woman in one class, I said, maybe you need to evaluate who you're married to. If he's being that adamant in the whole room, because it was 61 women. That was my biggest class. It was in Colorado, and the whole room, you could hear it. You hear the, and I said, I'm sorry, but that's if you're sitting here continuing to tell me over and over and over again that your husband says this to you, and you can't let it go, that says to me that there's something else going on in your home that you need to evaluate. Bottom line. So those are the moments that started hitting. I'm like, okay, the minute that we can teach women simple things, that it goes beyond parking under the lights at the lights at night at Walmart, right? Or getting in your car and locking the door. It's how many exits are in that Walmart? Do you have a plan to get out? What if your family is at a baseball game? Where are the exits, right? You may say, oh, if we get lost, meet by this, hot dog stand, right? Or whatever. But what does that mean in a crisis situation when everybody's running, right? Where are all those exits? Where's your exit strategy everywhere, right? You get those maps for Disneyland. Most people look at it for the next ride, but they're not looking at it for where these other exits are and where they can get out. So what I began to notice is as we begin to teach women this, they start to become more confident. And the more confident they become, the less dependent they become. And so now we start using this as a means to break the culture of victim mentality, which then allows us to become less dependent upon the government to protect us, because they've literally told us that they're not going to protect us. I mean, SCOTUS has actually ruled on that. So, and that's kind of how we get in. And then we talk about, with that component being arm the women. Two things. I'm a hardline constitutionalist. I'm a history geek. And when the founding fathers wrote right to bear arms, they didn't write it that right. It's not right to bear guns. It's right to bear arms, which is any and all means of an individual's ability to defend themselves and their home and their property from danger criminals or the government. So, in fact, side note of that, I think it would behoove the gun culture to change their language about right to bear arms, about being just guns, and start encompassing it as a more holistic approach, because it's a little bit harder to legislate arms as opposed to guns, right? So, so we teach them, rights and responsibilities around that, what options are. Because if you don't want a gun, I don't want you owning a gun. If you're not comfortable with that, don't own one. You're going to hurt me. You're going to hurt you. And then they're going to have more reasons to legislate. But whatever method you choose to defend yourself and accept personal responsibility for your own safety, train with it, learn it, and make it your own. And that's kind of how I made the connection to figure out how we can start breaking this culture of victim mentality. And then we can teach our daughters and our sons, right? So it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're not going to do it overnight, but if we can get 20 people in a class each time, across the country, that's 20 people that are going to go out and teach their friends, right? And then it's going to become that butterfly effect.
So what is
I
it?
talk a lot.
No, that's good, because the less I talk, the longer our listeners and our viewers stay tuned in.
The longer I stay tuned in, that's for sure.
Exactly. So what is a seminar? What does a class look like? How long is it? Who's the student? And talk to us a little bit about that.
So what I have found, and what I'm trying to move toward, I had something big happen this year that is going to help with that, which I'm excited about. But last year, through the year, it was gun. I know a lot of gun store owners, and so and of course they're very receptive to it. So they would bring me in. My class can be used as a CCW class, which is great. I just insert the most states it's acceptable for the classroom work of it. We just insert the laws for whatever state I'm in. But I talk about victim mentality, what it is, because we think we know, and then understanding what it is a whole different thing. I talk about the connections, like I did here, a little bit more in depth. I have some examples that I put up there. Recently we just had, right after Thanksgiving here in Washington, we had a woman who had left her abusive husband. He told her, if you leave me, I'm going to kill you. He was red flagged, surrendered his guns, and she ended up shot in the parking lot of the elementary school picking up her children because he obtained a gun. I mean, there's all kinds of, it was the trifecta, literally, of failed legislation, right? She had a restraining order. He had been red flagged. He still obtained a firearm, and he was in a gun-free zone. So it was like the perfect storm of things that they tell you are going to keep you safe. And of course they didn't. So I have some of those stories in there, some where women have died, some that haven't. I'm actually adding the church shooting in because that's a whole other thing. And if you guys have time, I'd love to talk about that, because there's a whole component of that I'm really trying to bring awareness to that isn't as acknowledged as it should be. And we can get in that in a little while if you want, but that's going to be added to my thing about what it looks like to be prepared and the significance of being prepared. And then we go into just basically the kind of, it's a 101, right? I mean, people can bring me back in, and the people in Colorado are, when I did that class of 61, some of them want me back to do deeper layers. But I talk about how do we start to retrain our mind, right? What kind of exercises do we go through in our minds? I talk about fundamental identification of threat. We go through the colors, right? Which I added black to mine because most people don't add black to theirs, but it's important to understand where you don't want to get to, right? With sensory, lockout and things. And, it's funny to hear the women giggle. I'm like, you ever heard that saying? I was so scared I shit myself. And they're like, ew. And I'm like, that's it right there. Like there's a reason that statement is there. And it's a reason it's literally classified in these colors that, and I forget, there's a name for that. I never remember what it is, but we don't ever want to get here. So we're going to do all this to not ever have to get to here. And so we talk about what those things look like in depth. And even, people's body language. We talk about how to read body language. We talk about watching people posture and what it looks like when people are doing that, which means how aggressive they're going to be and how you can react with that. And then we talk about the family thing. Like I talked about the Disneyland, that's a big one. That's usually, there's never been a single person in any class, even the most seasoned people that have come to my class, and they're like, I got this. I know this shit, whatever. The minute I bring up the family plan thing, there's never been a single person, and I've taught at this point probably close to 200 people, that haven't gone, oh, I didn't think about that. So that's usually a big one that gets people. So we end up spending some time on family plans and preparedness. And then we talk about options for self-defense. Super light. We don't go into that a lot because it's not about leading with the gun. It's not about leading with a knife. It's about, this is always your plan A, always your plan A. And what do we need to do to exercise this to make this muscle memory, like you would drawing or using a knife or any sort of hand to hand. And then the other component I spend the most time on is the rights and responsibilities surrounding self-defense. I fiercely believe in shall not be infringed. I mean, I'm pretty much sure I'm flagged by the FBI because I'm pretty hardline. Like, I'm like, stay off my goddamn lawn, and you have no bit. Like, my daughter is that way. I mean, she ain't getting married because she's like, I don't need to pay the government to tell me who I'm going to marry. I mean, like, we're pretty. I'm really proud. Don't worry, y'all. I got your future. It's cool. There's hope for the future. They're in my teenager and her friends. We're good. So we're pretty hardline about that. I do believe, however, that we need to be responsible within our own culture to not give them a reason to infringe upon us. And there's twofold reason for that. One, it's our effing responsibility as decent human beings to be responsible with self-defense tools that are deadly. Bottom line, that's just a fundamental human decency and morality issue. Second, when we can get to a point where we can stop being assholes to people outside of the gun culture, anti-gun people, and to each other in our own community, and get together and come up with some cohesive fucking plan for what that looks like, and we start to mitigate crime from the inside because we're self-policing, now politicians have no reason to say that they need to put gun control in place. So when they continue to do it, which we know they will, now we have valid reason to say, hey, we've got statistics showing that we've been able to mitigate this by self-policing our own culture and our own community. What's the real reason that you want to take these guns away from us? Now we have a better marketing plan, for lack of a better term, to come in and say, now we know what your intention is, right? Because now they can still hide behind it because we can't get our shit together. So that would be huge, right? I mean, if we could actually come up, like, my dream, unrealistic dream, is to have this awesome, like, marketing plan that every gun owner could, like, subscribe to, that would, mitigate guns falling into the wrong hands or whatever. And that, so then we can be like, politicians, now we know you're out of here.
Yeah. Even bigger than that, getting the people that are not gun owners in to listen to the same thing that you're talking about. I think that's huge. And I think you really have something here because, so much we talk about guns. We talk about guns. We love guns. We love to shoot and all that, but people with PTSD, women that have been battered, have been in serious situations, they're not quite ready for that hardcore gun. Some are, but many aren't. I grew up, I had a pretty tough life, and my father had a history of that with my mother, and I've seen my mother growing up as a kid, and her being deathly afraid of them. Not even too thrilled about guns today. She's not against them, but people aren't ready for that. And so teaching what you're teaching it goes so much beyond just weapons and guns, right? You're giving people hope of a mindset of, how do I get past what I'm going through? How do I not get into the mix of what she's talking about? How do I keep myself out of it? That confidence. And I think that's really great. So let me ask you this, Carrie. Is this a course towards women more, or is it for anybody? Who's it for?
So my initial plan, being a female domestic violence victim, and knowing that number is significantly higher than males, I knew that it existed for males, but I mean, it's quite a bit higher. 1 in 3 or 4 women, depending on the statistic you look at, and 1 in 7 men. 1 in 7 men tends to be pretty consistent across the board. I've seen 1 in 5, but the most common is 1 in 7. And this isn't counting the queer community, because I want to address that. And if any of you guys don't want to talk about that, just leave, because you guys can all kiss my ass, because they have just as much of a right to defend themselves as everybody else does. So I'm a fierce ally for the Second Amendment in the queer LGBTQ community, right? End of story. That being said, they
Same.
tend to skew the numbers a little bit for what those domestic violence survivor number. I'm like, okay, look, like I support y'all, but y'all need to like rein in the letters because I can't. I'm having a hard time keeping track of the statistics and like being able to put this out there because y'all keep changing that shit all the time. So Erin Paulette and I have that joke. You know, she's Pink Pistols and Blazing Swords, and I'm like, I can't keep track of y'all. So so that number tends to be skewed, which also tends to skew particularly the gay men number, right? Because that's a huge problem in their community. But so I went in with the idea that I wanted to bring women in and understand this, but particularly and I've always been, I'm a feminist, real feminist, not a feminazi. So I believe in equality. So it's always been important to me to acknowledge men and the struggles that men go through as well, and the struggles that these wackadoo feminazis put men through. And I think you and I have talked about that actually, I think a couple of times. And but during Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is in October, I shared the story of a man in my post, and it opened a floodgate for men. Like it was like I finally gave men that followed me this validation to be, and it just poured out. And so I shared more of those stories and things. In fact, I probably shared more than women's stories. And I realized that, and I've had men take my class. So I'm kind of kicking around. Do I change the name? Do I not? Do I expand it? I'm looking at what to do with that. And to make sure that it is encompassing, because it is information that that is valuable to men too. That being said, women are significantly, disproportionately targeted as random victims for crimes, particularly sexual assaults, muggings, that type of thing. So a lot of the situational awareness, defensive mindset stuff definitely is, for lack of, you want to say more relevance to them, but statistically, if you're basing it on what we see culturally, I would say it is. So, but no, men take my class all the time. Some of my biggest donors have been men because they like what I do, particularly because I don't completely blame men. But as we were talking about with the gun culture and awareness and language and how you said, I want to touch on this because this is really important to me. And if I can get through to some of y'all, this is super without it causing a fight. But you had mentioned like some women are not ready to have guns, or some women are not ready for that. That is true. And what people don't understand is that when I post, because I'll post on social media stories, right, of the women that are murdered or this or that, and there's a lot of victim blaming that happens, where I see a lot of things like, well, that's really unfortunate, but she should have been armed. Well, that's really unfortunate, but it was her choice to not be armed. And so whether that's true or not, like just take that and put it to the side, because I have a lot of domestic violence victims and survivors that are still in their situations that follow me. And they're following me, obviously, right? I'm giving them something, right, to come out. And they see that and they'll hide. They won't come out because that is reinforcing what they're taught at home, right? That they're programmed to believe is their fault. So when you see articles like this, whether it's something I post or whether it's something I'm talking about or whether it's somewhere else, please be mindful of that and be careful about that language you use, because that one particular victim that might be ready to send me a DM, because I get them weekly, I need, or I have a friend. Some of it is I have a friend, and then some of it is legitimately I work with a lady that is XYZ. What can I do? Or college girls leaving their boyfriends. That's a big one I get. And what do I do? So I literally walk them through it. And sometimes I'm their only resource because they just won't go anywhere else, and it's anonymous, or they not with their friend group or peer group. They see that, and so that comment may be the one that keeps that woman from messaging me. And I pray that she's strong enough the next week to do so, and she's not dead.
Yeah,
Right?
and
So
I'll give it to Jeremy.
Huh?
I'll give it to Jeremy in here in a second, but I was just going to say, so if you guys are a victim or somebody that's watching this show or following or not following Carrie, go follow her. Follow her Instagram. Let me tell you, I've been watching her Instagram lives here recently a little more often.
I'm kind of an asshole, though, just so you guys know. Let's just be clear.
I wouldn't call you an asshole, but I would just call you, you're straight up, you're honest, and that's what we need. We need to quit bullshitting and trying to beat around the bush. Let's say how we feel, and that's
sometimes that's fun. But
Yeah,
well,
well,
different
no,
conversation, right? Not hookers and cocaine. Sorry.
that's later. That's later, right? But follow her Instagram. It's really good. There was a good conversation. I think it may be part of the one you were talking about. That you had Star Snoop Dogg on. Another,
He came out
yeah,
because of me. Yeah.
another amazing story. You know, and I
look at her
mentioned
now.
it again. Crazy life I've had. I've been a victim of domestic violence with a female.
Yes.
I wasn't beat up or anything like that, but I went through that. And I actually shared it in a Citizens Police Academy thing in front of, 90% men, and pretty much all the men, you could either see them chuckle or be like, holy crap, this guy actually has the guts to say this. And I'm like, yeah, of course, more people need to, it takes a bigger man to admit that crap than to hide it. And so what I was going to say is, follow Carrie's Instagram, the Stilettos and Shotguns, because it's really, really huge to listen to her and just even have listen to the conversations between her and guys like Kevin Dixie or even Steve Fisher, and you're going to get plenty of comedy along with it. But Star Snoop Dogg, when she comes on with her, I mean, these stories really, really hit home. And the one night that I sat in the bedroom for like an hour in the dark because my wife was busy doing work, just listening. And I was just like, really, I was kind of, I don't even know what the word is. Just, I really enjoyed listening to the story, how everything came through, and giving the women and the people, women, men, whatever, gays, straight, I don't give a crap. If you need help and you're looking for that outlet, or you're looking for someone to even just listening to somebody else and being able to relate to them is huge. That may give them that strength to be like, hey, you know what? I think I need to reach out to Carrie. I think I need the help. And what do I do? Where do I go? And man, this seminar I think would be huge for them.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And it's one of these things where people see I'm a very, very alpha personality. Clearly, I was homeless. I grew up very, very poor. Very, very like Cops episode, like double wide trailer, dog in the front yard, Budweiser cans. They were like legit. Like I'm gonna dig through and find old pictures of me growing up and like show because people don't believe it now. And in my 20s, I was homeless. I lived in the salon that I worked in. I was a nail tech at that time. They moved a tanning bed out of this like little, I don't know, I think it was like 7 feet long it wasn't even 5 feet wide. I think it was like 4 feet wide room, and lived there for 9 months. So I was homeless. I didn't have, an address. I had a roof over my head barely, but at work. And I'm a entrepreneur. I own a day spa, the biggest day spa in the number one in my area region. And then I'm a commercial real estate investor now. So I'm a very, very strong personality. And I think the reason I'm telling you guys this is because I think for a lot of women in particular is when they can actually see that the strong woman was the one I couldn't make, like, did you guys watch my speech from the 2A rally? I talk about that. So that DC, the rally in Washington, DC, the 2A rally.
I was muted. Sorry. Yeah, I watched part of it. Yes.
Okay. So I actually talk about what happened to me. And I was so emotionally beaten down that I couldn't make a grilled cheese sandwich. Like literally could not make a grilled cheese sandwich because I wasn't going to do it right. But then I wouldn't do it at all. And then I was in trouble because I wouldn't do it at all. So I think for some women, what's inspiring for them to come out about it is to see, oh, well, she's kind of a bad bitch, right? I mean, that's, or I'm whatever. If she put up with that, so maybe I'm not as weak as I think I am. Right. So, and that tends to, and I think Caslin Stars, she was one of those. And, she was a dog groomer. Now she's an armed security guard for like the government or some crazy thing like that. Like not like DOD. Anyway, she's doing something. I don't know what she's doing. So it's just to watch her grow has been super fun. But I think that helps a little bit. Because I'm pretty unapologetic. I'm very opinionated. I'm sure you're shocked, but, I will also be there to help you get the support and resources that you need. I'm not going to babysit you to a certain degree, right? If you keep telling me the same story over and over and over again, that means you're not ready. I will be there. And when you are ready, I will lead you through but I will be patient and I will listen and I will give you the resources, but I can give you the resources, but I can't make you do it. So, but until you're ready, I'm there. So, and you can come and you just listen quietly and watch and listen to Steve be a butthole and Katie and I be horribly inappropriate with each other. Because I'm telling you, if y'all sensitive at all, don't watch Katie and I, especially. Like if you get any PC bone in your body about like race or gender, don't watch Argo J or NOC Firearms.
Yep.
Just, you've been warned. We have a good time though.
It's free
Katie
entertainment for me.
Yeah.
Free entertainment for me.
You know, Katie has been an amazing friend and mentor to me, and he and I have become buddies. And you know, we're big history geeks, he and I, and we understand. You know, I understand deeply the history of the birth of gun control in America. You know, being racist, and he understands the oppressiveness of women. You know, and I took a big hit. A young black man was watching, and he was very nasty to me. And Katie actually corrected him. Women were bought with property as well. You know, I mean, when this country was founded, women were barely status wise higher than slaves. You know, we had no rights and none of those things. And that's just a reality. And it doesn't demean or belittle anything that we had with slavery at all. But we get it. We get each other. And we understand how important it is for us to come together, much like Frederick Douglass and the women who started the suffrage movement, right? They came together as abolitionists and they helped each other advance. And so we get that together and understand what that means. And so we enjoy each other's time. And he's an awesome guy. You guys should, if you guys don't pay, that dude will wake you up, man. We call him the preacher.
I think I think what people oftentimes fail to realize is that I guess the path to like gun ownership and through gun ownership for somebody who's been controlled, right, and the victim of domestic violence, that's empowerment. And it's the empowerment that really gives people the ability to rise above those circumstances, right? There's a reason your abusive spouse doesn't want you to be able to defend yourself or doesn't want you to have the confidence, right? There's a reason the government doesn't want you to be able to defend itself, defend yourself, right? And it's not because, on one hand, the government, you touched on it earlier, right? The Supreme Court has ruled that the government has zero obligation to protect you. There could be a police officer literally watching you get stabbed to death, right? On a train, on a subway in New York City. Watch you get stabbed on duty, do nothing to save your life. And the Supreme Court ruled that is okay. The police have no obligation to protect you.
Three times. That's happened 3 times.
Yeah. And at the same time, they're like, you don't need guns. We'll protect you. It's like, you just told us that you don't have the obligation to protect us, that you're not going to protect us. You have a red flag situation right there in Washington State where the victim of domestic violence red flagged her abusive spouse. And I wonder on some level, did that provide a false sense of security? Right?
Yeah, of course it did. That and the restraining order did. You know, my ex was charged with a felony because how badly I was beaten up. The criteria that they used when they arrested him was that I was bloodied. That was like the grounds for it being arresting him. The initial charge was a class 3 felony. So like the lowest felony charge. He was charged with that in a DUI because they arrested him as he was going down the road. And he was able to drop it to a misdemeanor. And the reason in Washington State, the reason he was able to do that was because he didn't use a weapon, a physical weapon. It was just his hands. Well, he was 100 pounds heavier and a foot taller than me. He, lifted me off the ground by my throat and held me off my feet, off the ground. I'm in the process. It's taking a minute because it's been archived back because it's so long ago and I never thought I'd need it. Getting in touch with the county sheriff here to get the my photos. Because I was literally beaten head to toe. I've got crowns on my teeth. This side of my face now kind of droops a little bit because I took so much more of a hit to this side. So the muscles aren't quite as strong. That's the work I had done. to lift it back up. I couldn't be here last week. Let's just be real. Let me just keep it real with y'all. You know, I have tendon damage in my ankles and stuff. But they dropped it to a misdemeanor, and abusers are narcissists. And what people don't understand about narcissism or sociopathy is it's rare that they're not really, really, really intelligent. They're some of the smartest people around. And so he knew how to work the system. And so he was able to get that initial felony charge dropped to a diversion agreement. Even though I told his district attorney, who was a female, the prosecutor was a female, and I told her that I would testify against him, and she refused that. Tried to talk me out of it. And really what it comes down to is because it comes down to her win-loss record, right? Because she doesn't want to be there, so she's putting in the time, and so it's about her win-loss record. And so with a diversion agreement, it shows a win in her category. And so then he stalked me. He would sit, had a day job, but then his night job, he got a pizza delivery driving job to say that he had to be in my neighborhood because that was his territory. And he'd sit. And then I began to realize he was everywhere, but there was nothing I could do because he was sitting right outside of the 1,000 feet or whatever it was. And we have this culture that continues to disarm us and tell us that we need to rely on them. They've already told us that it's not their responsibility. Now, particularly for domestic violence survivors, throw on top of that a judicial system that's broken and consistently continues to fail these victims. And now you have every reason why women are continuing to die at the hands, right? Because there are male domestic violence. It's much less likely for them to die from it, right, than a woman. But that being said, what the statistics that the gun grabbers use are completely false. And I'd like to throw that out there for those that are having these conversations when you're going about this. The statistic they love to use is that a domestic violence victim is 5 times more likely to die when there's a firearm in the home. Okay. A, they're not telling you it's by firearm. And B, they're not telling you that that's not when they actually die. And I actually have Stephanie Lord gave me she's helped me with this because she's a survivor too. It's hard to find statistics on how many women have saved their lives because there's a firearm in the home. Typically, it's just compiling news articles as they come out. But it's been really difficult. So if you guys get those, send them to me because I do save them. I post them, but I'm trying to actually compile them. And archive them so that we can start to get a number. It's going to take years, but the most dangerous time for a victim is not when she's in the home. It's when she tries to leave the home. And that's when it gets dangerous. There's never been a story that I've come across where she's died being in the home. Every single news story I've come across is when she's tried to leave. And I know that personally. The county sheriff here told me when he was released, they said to me, we suggest that you not be home for 3 or 4 days because that's when they're the angriest. So I had to be displaced with my daughter from our home. And of course I didn't have any place. I didn't want her seeing me as bad as I was either. So she stayed with a friend for 3 or 4 days. She was 4. She was 4 when it happened. And I stayed with a friend. But I had to really find some place that he wouldn't find me at all. And I ended up staying on a boat. Fortunately we got a lot of water up here. So, but yeah, so they know it, right? They told me that the police told me that, yet this narrative is still being told that this is the case. And so domestic violence victims and children are huge pawns for domestic violence control or gun control. And it pisses me off. And, anytime I can get a lane to talk about that outside of the gun community, like if anybody who watches this, like if you know people, like newspaper interview, I will take any of that because I've got to get that information outside of the gun community because we get it in the gun community, right? But anything outside of this, it's so important to get that message out there.
Yeah, I think the domestic violence issue, it's layered and compounded by emotions and psychological abuse and emotional abuse. And I'd imagine that the majority of individuals in that in those circumstances, they know how bad it is, and they might think to themselves that it couldn't be worse. But I wonder, and I wouldn't be surprised if they fall short of thinking that it would culminate in that violent act that takes their life or their kids' lives, which might lead to an inclination of, well, if I just stick around it's not going to get any worse than this. I put up with it, right? If I do try to leave, that's only going to make it worse. And let's be honest, like, domestic abusers are manipulative, and they create a power structure within the home that makes it very difficult for the abused person to get out of it, right? Like, how many times does the victim of domestic violence leave with nothing? No money, right? Because the abuser has the money in the bank account. No credit cards, because they're not allowed to have that. No job skills, because no, I don't want you to work, right? And then here you are 15 years into a relationship, and you haven't worked for the last 15 years. And the last 10 years of that has been abuse, right? So now you're in a situation where the victim is literally stuck and has no power and has no control. And then what they do is it gets bad enough, so they call the police. The police arrest them. The next day they're out with the piece of paper that says, hey, this guy that just beat you to a pulp isn't allowed to come within 500 feet of you. And the cop will tell them, he's pissed, because how dare you put me in jail?
Exactly.
Embarrass
That's what
me.
my ex told me. Yeah. How dare you put me there?
How dare you put me there? And the police will tell them, hey, you don't want to be around this guy at all. And it's probably not safe for you to be in this house.
Mm-hmm.
Get what you can in the car and get the heck out of here. So we
get displaced from our homes, and typically they end up finding us. The women go back. That's the one that a lot of people have a hard time with, is I just don't understand why they go back, because they think, you have to understand that they've been beaten down. It's not like they just don't get drunk one night. Billy doesn't just get drunk one night and punch, Barbara in the face. That's not how it works. He has spent weeks, months, and years breaking her down mentally first. So she already thinks it's her fault. And so when you get into those situations like that, she will often go back because she believes it's her fault. And if she just hadn't have raised her voice, if she hadn't have asked him to take the garbage out, if she hadn't, whatever, then it would have been okay. So next time I won't do that. Right. And so that's when they come back in, and after they're angry, right, because it's this whole cycle, then it's the honeymoon phase where they're really nice to you and they treat you like you're their queen and this and that and other. There's no coincidence that usually the doctors that are on staff the day after Thanksgiving and the day after Christmas are domestic violence specialists. Mine was, because mine was the day after Thanksgiving. And I went in and I sat there and they said, how long has he been beating you? And I said, this was the first time. I lied. It was the second time. She knew it. Fortunately for me, it was only the second time. Which is sad to say, but 4 years before that, he had done it once before. And I said, if you ever fucking touch me again, you're going to jail. And I held to that, but I almost didn't. And during the whole time, right, I did it, right? But the whole time and during the whole process, I kept thinking, why did you do this? Why did you put yourself in this situation? You made it, like, I kept, me, right?
Self-compromise.
Knowing that I did the right thing, but it still messed with me.
Yeah, self-compromise really is the way I like to put it. You're compromising with yourself. You're trying to make it's much like, the mass shootings, and we don't have to go down that road, but you hear loud bangs, and what does your brain automatically goes to, oh, somebody dropped a box or something like that. It's kind of the same thing. Like, oh, well, like I said, if I wouldn't have raised my voice, if I would have made dinner at 4 instead of 4:15, maybe that wouldn't have been happen. But the other thing, not only that, is the one thing that we miss a lot is, we still love that person,
right?
Love is involved. And, going back to your conversation you talked about earlier was, about the guys. 'Cause I see it too. Oh, she should have bought a gun, or she needs to get training, or all that other bullshit. Right. Well, the thing that everybody forgets is you're having to put yourself in the mindset of possibly taking the life of somebody you love.
Right.
And
Right.
people don't get that. People don't understand it. If you've never been in that situation, you don't understand. You love this person, and this person
Right.
is beating the hell out of you, but your love just doesn't stop. Like, okay, he's beating me up, my love's over. For some it
Right.
does, but for most don't.
Right. And it's still your fault. Remember.
Right.
And it's like you're talking about the financial thing. So I owned a business and had opened my own business, and there's a lot of components that led mine to this, right? Because that's always the way it is. But I made more money than he did. And when that was the big thing that really made him feel threatened, is when I'd gotten to the point where I was making more money than him, he was really, really threatened by that. And which made the abuse at home worse. Then he would be he'd say manipulative things to my daughter as a toddler, and because he wanted me home more. And so I was trying to juggle this. So I'd work these 12-hour days, and I was working 3 12-hour days. I was in school. No, I think I was out of school by that point. I think I was finally out of school, but I was. And but he would say things like, she would want to jump on me as soon as I came home, right? If you're kids, you know how this works, right? And I would say, just give mom a few minutes. And he'd say, come here, mommy, or come here, Emma, mommy doesn't want to deal with you right now. Like that manipulative shit. He was manipulating her. And so that's what happens, and people don't realize that it's this whole thing. When I was giving my speech in DC, one of my friends that was in the audience, she heard a guy in the audience say, I just don't understand why the first time he hits them that they just don't leave. And I can guarantee you, I would place a huge amount of money on it in Vegas that guy is abusive. I have yet to come across anybody that's ever said that isn't abusive or is not being abused, and they're in denial that they're being abused themselves because they're not being hit. They're what's that, projecting? So
that makes a lot of
absolutely.
sense. Definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
That's so we were, we started the show with the preface that we were going to talk about changing victim and out the seminar. But I think that it's
okay.
I want to make sure we're giving you the service there, but I think this is a conversation that needs to happen. And because I would, again, this is me kind of just, guessing, right? I don't know if you gather statistics on it, but I'd imagine that a large percentage of the people that attend this seminar, do you know how many people that attend this seminar are in an abusive relationship? Or most of them, were they in the past an abusive relationship and they don't want to repeat the habits and the trends that sounds very victim blamey.
No, I get you. No, because it's a pattern. You have to remember, most of the people that brought me in are gun store owners. So, but that being said, if 1 in 3 women are being abused, and I had 61 women in that class.
Statistic,
yeah.
Right. So, there was, a third of that class had some sort of abuse. Some of them have gotten out of their situations. Some of them were there, I think, because they were maybe looking like subconsciously even, or their friend brought them. That's a big one, right? Let's go take this concealed carry class, with this underlying message to it. That's why I really would like to utilize every opportunity that people are able to present to get this class, this workshop, if you will, out of the gun community specifically. I ended up becoming a gun rights advocate accidentally because of how things played out for me, which is great. I mean, I'm not complaining about that at all, because I am a fierce constitutionalist, and I believe that we need to, defend our constitutional rights. And it gave me a very unique voice as a feminist to do that. So I have no problem with that. But the good and the bad of it is that everybody who's been incredibly receptive to bring me in has been gun culture people. But I really need to be able to get that lane outside of there. For me here, fortunately, quickly, and then we can move on. I'm sure we've got a couple of questions even from people. But here in Washington State, we have an organization called Violent Crime Victim Services, VCVS.org. And it was started in 1993 by a gentleman whose daughter was murdered. And they do advocacy. They're called for people called co-victims. And co-victims are people who have lost a family member to a violent crime more often than not tends to be gun violence. So they go in with the families to advocate while the murder trials are going on, or these types of things. And the short of it is, he found out about my program, loved it, and has endorsed it. And that's a huge endorsement for me. In fact, I'm putting up the event tonight. So if you guys, if you know people in Washington State, please share this, because I'll put the event up on Stilettos and Shotguns and We the Female tonight. But they are actually, it's the first time, because I've been a little bit of a pariah in my neighborhood because the G word, and everybody assumes what I teach is about using guns. I'm like, it has actually, what I teach has very little, if anything, to do with guns in general. But in Tacoma, February 15th, I'll be teaching my class, and he's actually invited the over 1,000 previous clients that he's had for the past 30 years. Now, obviously, we're not going to get that many there, but a church found out about it and loved it when I'm doing, and they're the ones hosting it. So it'll be in so we've got seating. It'll be, I'm expecting maybe 30 or 40 people, which is fine. It gets more than 50, 60. It starts to get a little bit like the dynamic of the class changes a little bit, which I can handle, but it becomes more of a lecture than kind of a workshop kind of a thing. But so this is a really good opportunity for me to start getting this voice outside of just specifically gun culture, and into some of those other areas. I've been very blessed. I can't say who yet. I'm tried there, particularly the individual. He's hard to nail down, but I have been given a grant for travel expenses for 6 states. Katie has taken one. So Kevin Dixie's taken one. So I'll be in St. Louis. Looks like Houston is picking one up. And then I've got some other, Colorado might take that second one. So I have that option available, which is nice because I don't get paid to do this. It's, I pay to do it, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But they believe in what I'm doing so much that I'm grateful to this organization, and y'all know who it is. So when I announce it, you'll be like, "Oh, that's cool." That they believe that we need to get this message out there. So if you have connections to women's organizations, domestic violence shelters, we can work together to get that message out there, because we need to get women to understand that they do not have to settle for depending on anybody but themselves for their own safety and security.
That's awesome. I mean, we have Stephanie Lord out here, so feel free to come to New Mexico.
Yeah, I would love to. I talked to her about that. I love Stephanie. I think she's great. And if domestic violence shelters, they're hard to get in with too, because they're very anti-gun, they're very victim-y, right? They domestic, not all of them, because there's one in Reno that's run by a guy, Jake Wickstrom, who's great. And he's actually had me on his podcast, a mental health podcast, because about red flag laws, and they get it there. I'm hoping to get in there with him, but domestic violence shelters, typically speaking, these people are earning their paychecks by encouraging victim mentality. So it's really difficult to get in because they believe it themselves. Like even the people running it believe that, and I mean, some of them go so far as like, they're like super bash the patriarchy, man-hating crap, which is horrid, because ladies, love your men. Love your men. We're smarter than they are. You've got to just,
love us and pity us at the same time, please.
Just humor them sometimes and just make them dinner. It's not going to hurt you. Okay. God.
Yep.
So, but it's a little bit challenging to get in with them, but like community organizations, service days. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that this can be implemented in communities. Because it's about your own protection, not about. There's never been anybody, and I challenge everybody to do this. Ask anybody if they think that our judicial system is not broken. There's not a single person that I will ever ask that does not agree that we have a broken judicial system. So usually the best way that I, metaphorically speaking, disarm them, excuse the pun, is when I say to them, so if you believe we have a system that's broken, why do you want to continue to put laws in place that inhibit my ability to defend myself when that very system that you already believe is broken is continuing to allow people to like me to continue to be victims. That usually stops them. Like, boom. Like, if you want to get in the, like, you want to end the gun control conversation with somebody real quick, do that. Do you believe we have a broken judicial system? Well, yeah, it's a mess. But I know, right, they'll get ready and say, so why do you want to continue to put laws in place that continue to take away my ability to defend myself when they can't do it?
I think with that, there's I think one of the things that gives gun control the power that it has is less about how guns save lives and more about like a team mentality, because
Right.
typically speaking, historically speaking, not historically speaking, the perception is that the Second Amendment is for me, people that look like me,
Right.
and
Right.
not for people that look like you, and not for people that look like Andy, right?
Oh,
It's
definitely not Andy.
yeah, it's for the not for
Back
bald
over the
people.
wall, man.
Yeah, you can't have hair, you can't have a gun, right? I think the perception has been, and for gun control advocates, I think they do a great job of furthering this mentality and this perception that gun control or guns, the Second Amendment is for old white dudes, right?
Right. Because the NRA, everybody assumes, if you talk to anti-gun people, they always, if you hear anti-gun, when they talk about gun nuts, it's always NRA.
Yeah.
And I've been working actively to break that stereotype.
And I don't know what the NRA is doing. I don't know if that's who they're pandering to, because I didn't know they helped out with was it Shanine Allen? Up in
Black girl.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they were involved in fighting for her. That should have been that shuts all of that stuff down. So why did they suppress
because their marketing people are fucking dumb. That's why.
Yeah.
Because they're fucking stupid. Because if they were smart, they'd have people like Andy and I up there.
That's right.
Do you guys know about Jeremy, you probably don't. Andy, do you know about when I confronted Willis Lee at SHOT Show last year?
No.
And what happened with that? So Katie was presenting his truth pistols, which I have number 1. For those of you that don't know, if you know about those, I actually have serial number 1. I was the first one to order it. And yes, I totally brag about that because it's awesome. And not only because I supported my friend, I believe in what he's doing.
I was going to say not so humble brag.
Not at all. Are you kidding me? Not so humble at all. I have number 1, just so y'all bitches know. He actually made me cry when he did that. I was not expecting him to do that. And because of the prototypes, right? But no, I have the first retailed one. So he that was actually by law, I guess. But anyway, he made me cry because he made a big to do of it. But Willis Lee was standing there, and somebody said, "Oh, that's the right." Because remember, I didn't even know what SHOT Show was. Like, I showed up and I was like, "What the hell is this thing?" Right? A year ago, I didn't even know that existed. Well, now I did, but barely. I walked in there and went, "Jesus, what the hell did I get myself into?" So I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, you're there. Cause I think at that time, I don't know if he still is, he was their director of outreach or something like that. And I said, and I handed him my card and I said, I'm Carrie Sloan. I'm founder of We the Female, a domestic violence survivor. And you need me. We need to talk because we need to address how you guys are the conversation around how you are dealing with women and firearms. And so he looked up at me because I was in heels and I was taller than him. So he looked up at me. And he said, yeah, that's exactly how you're going to get me to talk to you, is by talking to me that way. And he turned to walk away from me and I touched his shoulder and I pulled him back like this. And he turned around and looked at me and I said, your shitty attitude right now is exactly why you need to talk to me. And he, like a little kid, went like this and walked away. And Laura and Colleen Smith was standing there, liberal gun owners. And she said, somebody needed to do that to him. And I said, well, why haven't you done it? And she just stepped back. And then I met Tim Knight. And that's how I met Tim Knight, because he was standing there. And Tim Knight said, somebody needed to say that to him. And I'm glad it was you. I'm Tim. And then he handed me his card from the NRA board. And I was like, really? You're one of them? Right? Because, right. And so then I found out who Tim really is, which is the Illuminati. And
literally.
And so Tim, of course, is a very good friend of mine now. I adore Tim. He's usually one of my go-tos when I need help or advice and support. And we just run stuff off of each other sometimes. Yeah. And but you guys have to understand, before I was a gun community person, I was a gun owner and a fierce gun owner, and was very I have a very unique perspective of NRA. I was very anti-NRA. My husband and I gave up our memberships 3-4 years ago, long before I knew that. Like when my post went viral, and 2 weeks later, I'm like, shit, there's a whole world of these people. Like, where did this come from? I had no idea there was a culture, right? And makes sense. And no idea this existed. And so we gave up our interview because we hate lobbyists, despise lobbyists. And that's all we saw them as, was this big lobbyist group that had become corrupt and was like full of shit and, and all this kind of thing. Then I get in to the gun culture and I see that there are actually things that the NRA does. Like ILA, I had no idea that existed. I'm like, oh, like there is actually some things that the NRA does do that is very, very important and very vital and not bad at all. So what I've come to realize is that's not what needs to go. It's that executive branch that needs to be replaced. And we need a whole house cleaning and a douching, as it were, to get rid of the douches. And so I have a very unique perspective that way, being somebody who was anti-NRA coming into the gun world and then saying, whoa. There needs to be some conversation around this, but definitely their marketing component of that is a giant disaster. And I don't foresee that changing, unfortunately, anytime soon. Which is sad, because actually if any time they need to be doing it, it's now.
Yeah. Hey, Carrie, just a thought popped in my head. Have you ever, and don't laugh, but have you ever tried going to Moms Demand Action and trying to get in to be like, hey, let me talk to you guys a little bit about my experience and what I do? And
yes and no. I've tried to reach out to them through social media, which is a network. People laugh about that, but I mean that's a legitimate way to get a hold of people now.
Right.
I've been blocked everywhere.
It's almost about the only way.
Huh?
It's almost about the only way.
In some cases, yeah. Yeah, because we have a state representative here who's not in my district, and so her people weren't returning my messages. And so she had commented on a tax thing up here because I have her, she's in my area and we have mutual friends, like personal friends. And she popped off about some taxes. And I said, I said, do not refer to yourself as a leader. You are not my leader. You are an elected representative. And the language about who you are needs to change with you. I said, and it would serve you well to remember that you're a representative and return people's emails when they send them to you instead of ignoring them. And I actually left that. I screenshot it. And I left it on social media. And boy, did I get a message back quick then. So, and so then she messaged me, and then I received this fuck off, essentially, email from her staff, right? I can tell you she didn't even read my email that I resent her to at the top, but resent per your request. And so I responded back to it and I said, thank you for responding. However, I think it's really disappointing that you've chosen not to see me. I realize you have no obligation as I'm not in your district. However, I'm bringing a conversation about gun control to this that you really, as a Republican, you really need to be hearing. And I've got some stuff that you really is going to help benefit you in this fight when you're telling me that you're behind enemy lines in your message as a Republican. So I emailed it to her. I sent it to her in a Facebook DM. Then I went on her timeline on her wall on Facebook and I said, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I responded to that email. And since you were having such a challenge being able to receive my emails, I just wanted to let you know that I sent it to you in a DM too, just to make sure that you get it.
Nice. And
guess who I got an email back from? So from her personally, not her staff. So yeah, use Facebook, but I say always try to be a resource and not an adversary, until you have to be. Then call them out, right? But don't go in with that. And I'm kind of an a-hole. Like if you follow me, people think that I go in with both barrels, wide open, blazing. And I don't. I may talk a lot of shit online and stuff, but when I'm dealing with these people individually, nah, like you've got to be like, don't go in being an asshole or you're not going to get anywhere. Right. Educate them. I sat with another state senator here and she wasn't completely anti-gun, but she wasn't pro-gun. She's running down the middle and she's a Democrat. She's the only one that responded to me, interestingly enough. And I sat down with her and talked to her and there were some things that we agreed on and didn't agree on. I said, have you ever shot a gun? And she said, only shotguns, skeet shooting. And I said, so that they're not the horrible things people make them out to be. She goes, no, but it's things surrounding it that we can make better, because she's all about the capacity magazine ban. And I educated her about that. So I pulled out a baggie with rounds in it. And I had a 22 all the way up to a 308. And I said, this little round 22 in that assault weapons ban bill that you guys have on the table, you have guns in that bill and want to ban guns that are as assault rifles with this size round, but not with this one. And she just stopped and went like this. And I went, like, you guys don't get that this is not what you think it is. And it stopped her. And then with the magazine ban, this is a great one for y'all, because this is really the only argument we have. Steve Fisher actually helped me with that. Steve went through, we sat on the phone for about an hour together, and I went through the laws, and I read the things, because that dude knows guns. Like, he's Rain Man of the guns, man. Like, from everywhere in the world. Like, he just know,
he's all right.
doing this. And so he helped me kind of create that language. Yeah, he's pretty fly for a white guy, crotchety old man. So he helped me with some of that language, and I'm waiting for if he's still watching anywhere, I'm waiting for my little thing showing up with a text message. He went through that, and then he sent me a video to show her about, right, because the concept with this magazine ban thing that they're after is that if they limit the capacity, this is literally the logic that they have, that it takes them longer to reload, therefore saving lives. So I showed her the video of somebody who was not, like, Steve sent it to me, and this person was not, they were not an expert. I mean, like, my husband and Steve, and maybe you guys, I mean, I don't know. My husband is 0.5 seconds, right? He's military. He's been doing that forever. He's quick. Steve, probably 0.5. You guys are probably under a second, for half second, 3/4 of a second. So worst case scenario, we're looking at, 3 seconds. Well, Steve sent me one of a guy who was not completely amateur, but he wasn't an expert. So he was about a minute, second and a half. So I showed her that video, and she went real quiet. And I said, that is somebody who's knows how to shoot a gun, but isn't necessarily an expert. So if he were completely inexperienced, it would be maybe 3 to 5 seconds, maybe 5 seconds, most likely 3. I said, so you're talking about someone who's wearing 3 magazines at 10 rounds apiece on their waist. And at this point, she looks at me, she goes, yeah. I said, so they're having to change that. And you're saying that time is going to save their life. She says, well, yeah. And I said, do you think that 9 seconds is going to save somebody's life when it takes the cops, at best case scenario, 10 minutes to show up? And she had nothing. Mm-hmm. She couldn't even get emotionally defensive. She just went quiet, and she sat there. I said, you know who you will hurt? You will hurt me, because I keep a 30 round capacity in my AR. And I choose an AR in my home because my AR is light. I'm accurate with it because I can brace it against my shoulder. There's less recoil, and there's going to be less collateral damage. I am not strapping up 3 10-round magazines in the middle of the night when I've got multiple intruders coming in my house. I need all 30 rounds ready to go. I said, you're going to be hurting someone like me who chooses an AR as a means for self-defense. You also hurt competitive shooters, and all this kind of stuff. And she had nothing. Like, she didn't get shitty. Yeah. She didn't get mad, which means that I planted the seed. So could she still vote for it? Sure. But at least she's not going in blind. And that's the best I could do, at that situation. So, that's what, so educate people before you blow them up. Then blow them up. Like, if they turn into dicks, let it go. And I'll be more than happy to help you write it.
Ignorance is what gets them, right? And the anti-gun groups, they come prepared, right? They come in force. Andy and I down at the Santa Fe, and we had spoken out in opposition of a couple bills they were trying to pass, and there they were, the anti-gunners. They had leaflets, they had bullet pointed lists for the people that were on the committee, right? And then our side got up there, and we were flat-footed, right? We were speaking of, there were guys up there that were speaking in opposition to this bill, and they had some points that were the anti-gunners had already thought out and planned for, and they said, hey, those points that they just brought up don't even apply to this bill, because we're not touching that stuff. We're not doing that stuff. Right. So our side looks like we don't know what we're doing. Right?
Exactly. So and they're capitalizing on it. And, we get a bunch of people up there with guns, gun owners. They're like, well, this is my Second Amendment right. And they're reading all that. Because I just went and testified in Tacoma, right? I don't even live in Tacoma, but I testified because they put a gun and ammo tax there. And they knew we knew. I mean, it was unanimous. They knew what they were going to pass it. They, interestingly enough, every single one of them, all 8 of them, including the mayor, also admitted before they voted to pass it that they didn't know what they were voting on and how it was going to affect people. Like, they all admitted it. They didn't fucking care because that's how they've gotten, right? But the Arrow, right? Probably at least at a minimum 25% of Arrow's employees showed up to speak. I mean, that room was packed pro-gun. and pro gun rights, and not so much on the other side. I mean, they were outnumbered 5-1 easily. But some people had really good points. I went in, with my, why are you not fixing your system? I went in with my very powerful talking points, and I said, and if you're, and this is, I went in like putting ammo tax in place. What about women who ride the bus? They can't, if your thing is, well, they can leave the city to buy their ammo if the cost is, but not if they ride the bus. Like, you're literally targeting marginalized groups of people, right? You're targeting, I hate to use the word minority because nobody's really a minority anymore, but my brown people, right? My brown people, my black people, if they live in an urban area where they don't have transportation, they may rely on bus for transportation, or if they are low income, because spoiler alert, white people, not all black people are poor. Not all brown people are poor people. Yep. Contrary to like some sort of like weird, bizarre gun world structure sometimes.
Contrary to what the NRA believes.
Right? It's weird. Not everybody, so nobody come at me in the DMs because I'm saying fuck off. But I'm speaking like this is like Andy's laughing because it's kind of true, right?
No, it's very true.
See some of this stuff, huh?
It's very true.
Yeah. So, but you've got single moms, you've got domestic violence survivors living in the cities where the apartment where they can get to work by bus. And I said, you're marginalizing them. And if your argument then is to tell me that, well, the ammo tax isn't that much, then why are you putting it in place to begin with if it's not that much? So, I came in and there was a few of us that had a really formidable argument, but so many of them got up there and were like, well, this is my constitutional right. I'm like, Jesus Christ, we fucking know. Like, if you leave a comment ever in one of my social media things that says shall not be infringed, literally the response is going to be, we fucking know. Like, and just stop with that.
And it's being infringed every day.
And spoiler alert, everything but the Third Amendment has been infringed upon in this country. Right. Every third and 10th, but they're using the 10th against you right now. If you don't know what it is, get the goddamn app. It's free for your phone. Educate yourself on what the Constitution is. But they're using the 10th Amendment right now. The federal government is using the 10th Amendment to take away your rights so that then they can backdoor it and do it federally. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole other conversation. I could geek out about the Constitutional, but and how it's being manipulated against us. But like, can you get a permit can you speak in a park with a group of people without a permit?
Right.
No. You've been infringed forever because you got lazy and complacent and you fucking let it happen.
Yeah.
All of us. We the people, one of the best questions I've ever been asked in a live stream. Best question. I've actually written a little blog post and I want to get it published actually. I don't know why I can sit and talk all day or give speeches, but to like publish, like it's a huge insecurity. But I've got this thing written as an op-ed based on this question, which is, what do you believe is the biggest threat to our liberty? And it is we, the people.
Us,
we have literally become our own worst enemy. And it's been, from what I've come up with, are these, what I call the 3 C's. We've been complacent, complicit, and contrary. And those 3 things have allowed us allowed the government to think that they're delusional enough to think that they are our leaders as opposed to our elected representatives. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they have gotten us we have put ourselves in the situation that we are in. End of story. We have the government we have allowed to happen. That's the difference between a democracy and a republic. We're a republic, remember. We're not a democracy. So we have allowed this to happen. And now we're behind the 8 ball, proverbial 8 ball, trying to get back out of this now. And it's frustrating and not perfect. So, I told y'all I could keep talking. Like, y'all keep me on forever. Right?
No, it's good. I think we could keep talking. I want to get back. I want to circle back to the church shooting because you said that's something that you wanted to talk about. I think it's something that we wanted to talk about. And I don't know if we wanted to do. I'm sure there are plenty of other folks out there that have talked about it, but it is something that we wanted to discuss on a show as well. So there was a question I want to get to. Ruben had asked the question about what about when you get accused of domestic violence and it's not the case? So when you're falsely accused of domestic violence, and this isn't to take away from any of the previous discussion that we had, right? Because the instances
I deal with that topic. I deal with that topic a lot as a feminist, and I acknowledge it, which is rare for a lot of domestic violence survivors. But I do acknowledge that it does happen, and that is why I'm that weird, rare domestic violence survivor that not only is pro 2A, but because even a lot of us that are pro gun as domestic violence survivors will still be that man. Will be that man blamer, or that fuck them. They should have their guns taken away until blah blah blah. Now, if you're accused of domestic violence, you are still due your process as an American citizen, and you are innocent until proven guilty, and your firearm should not be taken from you, which is why women should not be perpetuating or should not be in a culture that's perpetuating their victim mentality, right? So this is where the whole catch-22 is, right? So I absolutely believe that any individual is due their process, that you're innocent until proven guilty. That's difficult when we have this culture that's continued to encourage women to be victims, right? So there's no easy answer to that. But it really is going to start by even men getting on board with helping to encourage the proper way to reconstruct and what it looks like for women to take care of themselves and defend themselves. And y'all, gunmen are some of the worst, man. Like, you guys there's a lot of chauvinism and a lot of misogyny going on.
Oh, yes.
In the world. I just don't have to put up with your asses, because I'm gonna tell you to fuck right off, right? I will. I don't care. But it's also ostracized. I've been, people don't like to play with that, right? Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, it's more the conservative women have a hard time with that. I've been called harsh and abrasive, and I'm like, but you fucking voted for Trump, like, so if Trump said it or a man said it, he'd be a leader. Right. So this is why we still need feminism. And goes back to that whole kind of thing, right? You guys think I'm abrasive and I'm harsh. But if Trump had said, I'll say some of the same things that he'll say, in context or whatever it is, or in some form of it. And you guys support it with him. But I'm being too harsh and abrasive, conservative women. But you're MAGA girls. Mm-hmm. So that is one of those things where feminism is still, we do still need that, because there is still that culture of, a woman is bossy, a woman is bully, a woman is harsh, but a man is a leader. So if we really, like, in the ideal world, right, if you really want to get to the point where you have men that are legitimately and fairly given their due process, that is also going to be benefited from changing the culture of victim mentality, so that women have more empowerment to be able to learn how to defend themselves. So they're not put in a situation where they feel like they've got to call. And then we can start addressing the women, right? Because if a woman is falsely accusing you, that's abuse, right? So now she's abusing you. And so now we can get to where you as a man, right? Because this is where feminism comes in, because it's equality. You as a man can now be more comfortable with coming forward about your abuse and what you're going through, so that you can now speak out about it and be treated equally as well. So this is why we need feminism, kids.
Just be nice to people, right? Don't
stop being dickheads.
Be nice to people. Raise better children. I mean,
raise better children. Absolutely.
There's a whole, man. That's just be nice to people. Raise better children. Don't, man. If you're in a relationship and you have to control, like, if you're an abusive person, how shitty is your life where you are so insecure with yourself that you have to control another human being to make you, to give you some false sense of substance, and just be a better person and do what makes you happy. Stop being a jerk. Jeez, it's fucking 2020.
Exactly. I'm looking at the comments here, and you've got this guy who I think, different guy. He said, yet that is not what happens. Some of the time, males are destroyed by victims a majority of time. Okay, I want to walk that back a minute. Males are destroyed by victims. If she is legitimately a victim, you fucking deserve to be destroyed.
Yeah. And I don't know if
that might be a harsh reality for you, sir, because maybe that's happening to you, and maybe you needed to look at yourself.
I don't know. So I know, Joel, I go back to high school with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it, no. I want to, Joel, clarify your comment for us, but I'm guessing that you did not like victim, right? Like, I 100% agree. Like, if you're the victim, if you're abusing somebody and the victim destroys you, you deserve it, and all that, right? Like, if you're a spousal abuser, you go, go swallow a gun, right? Go swallow a high point, because that's just going to further perpetuate the ignorance. I think with the victim mentality, if somebody is falsely accused of domestic violence or rape, I think victim mentality has led to
the Me Too bullshit.
The Me Too, 100% believe the victim 100% of the time, because if you question it, if there's a shadow of the doubt, you're blaming the victim, which leads to the
Right.
the falsely accused person having their lives destroyed, right? Because if you're arrested of domestic violence and you get a public defender, and that public defender says, hey, we're going to plead it down to a misdemeanor, you're not going to spend any time in jail. How many times does that happen? And that public defender or that attorney does not tell that person who is falsely accused, right, but wants to avoid all the hassle because, I got emotional, it was an argument or whatever. Now, all of a sudden,
always got money.
That person who was falsely accused and took the plea deal can no longer has the Second Amendment right to defend himself, right? Like I get phone calls several times a year from people, right, that they claim to be they were falsely accused, right? They were arrested, they pled no contest, right? They agreed to a pretrial diversion. And in the state of New Mexico, that's still considered a conviction, right? If you plead, like if you take a pretrial diversion, that's still considered a conviction, right? And you cannot do, right? Like you can't own guns. You can't get a concealed carry license.
If it's a felony, right?
Yeah. Well, if it's if you plead no contest to a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, you can't own federally. You're prohibited from owning firearms.
I didn't realize that you were meaning state.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because that does happen. That being said, this will probably piss off some of your listeners, but it's very rare that it is a false accusation.
Yeah. Maybe the time that you were finally accused was a false accusation, but don't put yourself in a situation where that accusation can hold water. Right. And chances are, if you're with
that goes back to personal responsibility, defensive mindset of like just your situation, right? If you knew that broad was batshit crazy and you still married her,
your fault.
There's some personal responsibility on that, right? Like if you went into that saying I'll fix her or she'll change, you kind of put it on your. And I'm not making excuses for their behavior. Let me be clear. But that goes back to changing the culture of victim mentality, right? Because now you're making yourself a victim by saying, all right, because there should have been signs there, right? There was probably signs there that this was this person. Now, again, not always. There are times like I have a friend who, when he married his wife, she was great. She ended up getting wrapped up in drugs, and when they were going through the divorce, she accused him of all. I mean, it was awful, and he is and definitely not that guy. It does happen. However, usually in those cases, what I have found over the past year studying this, right? I'm no lawyer, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express one time. So I actually worked at one. So it's what I see it not as a hooker, but or as a madam. But what I tend to find is it can happen, but it's very, very rare that that's the case. And in those rare cases, it is very transparent to judges what's going on. That's been my consistent. Like I've not yet found a case where of the rare cases that is legitimate. I have yet to find anybody where the judge has not seen right through the bullshit. Now that doesn't mean that that doesn't make it okay that she or he, whatever in the case, is that putting you through hell. It's absolutely not. It's fucking ridiculous. Let me be clear and let me validate you because it's absolutely not acceptable. But it is. I find it's very rare that tends to be the case. But it can happen. So like on the Me Too movement thing quickly, and go back to that church shooting. It's a good question though. It's a really good question. And a lot of people don't ask that question as much as they should, honestly. So I'm glad you did ask it. But the Me Too movement, this is where I sit in this really unique position where I see it from both sides, right? As a domestic violence survivor, and seeing how the system is broken and how it continues to fail us, or how we get blamed, or how these fucking assholes leave these comments in the section, right? With shooter defenders, or there was just recently last year, it was a rape case in Alabama where the judge asked her why she didn't close her legs. Like there is legitimately still a reason women don't report, because what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to believe us anyway, or it's going to be our fault because our skirt was too short, or it's going to be this, or you write blah, 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 blah. So that does still exist. However, that being said, I also know that there have been a significant number of women who have exploited the shit out of that, and that Kavanaugh hearing, and those women, shame on them for, at the very least, if nothing else, not giving him due process and turning a vague 30-year-old sexual aggression assault claim into a rape. They call them a rapist, right? I mean, this is how extreme that went. So that's not okay. So I run this really fine line right down the middle where I literally see both sides of that Me Too movement, because I do understand why a lot of women don't report. I fucking get it. I am one of them. Like, what was the point? I put myself through hell to get justice, and they screwed me. Absolutely screwed me over. And so what was the point of me doing it, right? So I am legitimately a Me Too. Not a sexualist. Well, he actually did sexually assault me, but it was, in conjunction with the domestic violence, the physical beating. But it's so I get it from that side, but at the same time, you do have women that falsely do that shit, and it certainly isn't helping, and it certainly isn't that manipulation. Like, this is why men won't trust you, right? My husband and I got in a huge fight. I shouldn't say huge fight. It was a heated conversation. That's more about that. When Pence came out and said he would have lunch with women, and he's like, I get it. And I said, fuck you. Who the hell, what is that? Right? Because my husband's very much a feminist. And because guess what? Spoiler alert, men can be feminists, and you should be. Because it's about the philosophy, not about the word. And he
Jeremy's really feminine too, just saying.
Are you a feminine? Are you a feminine?
No. I do have 2 daughters. So.
And he said, yeah, see, and it's funny how much more of a feminist you become as a dad of daughters, isn't it? Funny how that happens. Yeah. And he said, fuck no. He says, I'm not putting myself in a position where a woman's going to accuse me. And I said, how dare you? Right? I mean, I was pissed, wicked pissed. Then the Kavanaugh thing happened. And then I was like, it was still a little bit of a disconnect for me. Honestly, owning my own shit, it was a little bit of a denial, me being stubborn. But then there was a reporter in, after the Kavanaugh thing it was in Louisiana, who was pissed that this congressperson down there, or senator, governor, somebody, I don't even know what it was, wouldn't have lunch with her without somebody else there. And I was like, yeah, I wouldn't either. And my husband went, I was like, okay, I get it. So guess what, feminazis? You fucking created your own situation by exploiting and making and spinning that shit. Fuck you, Alyssa Milano. Fuck you, Rose McGowan. And actually, that's not fair, because Rose McGowan should be screwed. She should piss off for other reasons, but not for that one, because she was actually legitimate. But Alyssa Milano, if I ever see her. So, because she just ruined it for women, right? I mean, anyway, I could go on. Let's talk about the church shooting, because I'm like, that's you can tell that's a thing for me.
Before we get to the church shooting, I want to help answer another question that you can help me with, Carrie. That Joel asked another question. Well, men, why don't they report it when they're victims? And so, before you give your input on it, for me, I'm going to tell you, like I said, I was involved in a situation with a crazy ex-girlfriend that was really, really nuts. A physical altercation happened, and I actually, right in front of her own daughters, and I'm the one that called the police. And the police department came, she ran, and when 2 police officers, men got there, and I opened the door, and they're like, where's she at? And I said, what do you mean, where's she at? I said, I'm the one that called you. What do you mean you called us? And I said, well, this is what happened.
You couldn't handle it?
Yeah. Well, and they didn't say that, but one of them was real aggressive with me, to the point where he's like, well, what happened? What'd you do? How did you start?
Because you're guilty, right?
Yeah, right away. And I said, you know what? You can take a step and you can go outside. And he says, what do you mean I can go outside? And I said, you can go outside. You can call your sergeant and you can go outside, and I'll sit here with this other officer, because you're not even listening and you just walked in the door. And I guess the other officer that was with him was his superior, and he turned and he goes, hey man, why don't you take a step outside? And they actually did call a female sergeant, and she showed up. And then, right away they asked what happened, explained it, everything that went on, and then, long story long, she got arrested down the road. But the easy answer is, why don't men report it? For that exact reason: shame, ego. Culture. How many times are you going to go tell your boys that you had to call the cops on your girlfriend? Right. Like what kind of bitch are you? You can't handle your chick. You know what I mean? So that's where that comes from. I mean, really, in my opinion,
and that's dead on. And so when I opened that floodgate with the domestic violence survivors on my, when I posted those male stories, the comments, I mean, I was crying for someone, because it just hurt my heart, where these men were told that some of them, even their family members, were were, just, man up or stop crying, whatever. One guy was being raped. He took Ambien to sleep, and his wife was raping him. And if you take Ambien, right, that you cannot know that you've done that, I guess. I used to take Ambien. I've never experienced that. But I mean, for some people, that's like, it would put you out asleep so heavy that you wouldn't know it. So he was being raped while he was asleep. And something cued him in to figure it out. And then I guess she said something and laughed it off. Well, he even tried to tell his family. And his family said, oh, what, you don't want to have sex with your wife? Right? Like, so that's absolutely a cultural thing. And it is not okay, which goes back to that fundamental philosophy of feminism, which is about true equality. That when we can start changing the structure of how we think, we can start allowing men to come forward, because it's, for many, many reasons, men are at a disadvantage, that being a huge one. But a lot of other things, mental health. I mean, there's a reason why 70% of 70% of all gun violence is suicide. And it's like 70% of that are men, right? And there's a reason for that. It's because culturally we have put this stigma on men that they can't come out about their mental health, and that they can't come out about abuse or other things that are, they have to man up and do all this shit. And that's what's causing a lot of this. So when we can start accepting men to come out about their mental health, then we can start watching gun violence numbers drop, because we're starting to deal with suicide and addressing that. If you follow, I want you guys to look at Walk the Talk America, WTTA.org. And his name is Michael Sedini. Michael Sedini, if you are a gun person, he was the owner of Eagle Imports at one time. Sold
Say that again.
He was the owner of Eagle Imports.
No, it was Walk the Talk.
Walk the Talk America. So if you go to they're on Instagram and WTTA.org, they have anonymous mental health screenings that you can do on there. And what's interesting about those is sometimes you could take them and you're like, oh, I'm not as bad as I thought. Like, they can almost be oddly validating. Like, you may think you're in horrible shape, and then you take it, you're like, oh, I'm okay, right? I mean, I may need a little bit of help, but maybe I'm not as bad as I thought I was, right? So sometimes they can actually be kind of validating in a weird way. But his big, like, the quote that he likes to use is, I sit at the intersection between mental health, suicide, and guns, right? So the whole idea behind Walk the Talk America is to change the stigma behind mental health, to allow people, particularly men, to come out about mental health so that they can stop using that as a way to take away guns. So it's a wonderful program. We're trying to figure out, because we know that there's got to be some way that this can work with DV and PTSD and stuff. We just haven't figured out the right groove to move it forward yet. But we definitely support each other's work, because there's some good stuff happening with what he's doing, and it's fantastic. So I highly encourage y'all to check it out. And they started the first program in the country where they work with Zephyr Wellness out of Reno, Nevada. And if you're a mental health practitioner, you can, and they get people in, because they work with Mental Health America, that can go in and you can take, they've got a class that talks about gun violence and suicide. Then it's a basic pistol class, including range time. So it's a 2-day deal. So you're getting these mental health practitioners who are coming from all over the country, who may have never even held a gun in their hand. Some of them are anti-gun, but they get talked into, they'll go, right? Let's be real, right? The minute you get the proper training with a gun, you put one in your hand, I've yet to meet anybody who's not like, right? Because that's a pretty powerful, especially for women, right? That's a pretty powerful feeling. So the cool part about it is been nationally recognized as a continuing education unit now. So this class, so mental health, right? It's cool. So mental health professionals can now go take this class and destigmatization of mental health and guns, and it becomes continuing education credit. So now he is working to put mental health professionals out there to be able to say, it's not the gun. What are we doing about suicide? It's so fucking cool. I just think it's such a cool idea, and desperately needed, actually. So church shooting.
Yes, church shooting. Before we segue into that, hey, talk to somebody if you need to talk to somebody.
DM me. Send me a message. If it's on Messenger on Facebook, I'm not always good about checking if we're not friends. You know what I mean? Because it's like puts it in that weird component. Yeah. Instagram is probably the best place to catch me. But if you're not even comfortable going to your boys here, DM me. And I'll set you up with resources in your area, because I'm connected to be able to, with 1-800 numbers. I have a list of those, but I also, in some states, I have mental health professionals I can send you to.
Awesome.
So yeah, get help. You are not alone, first of all.
And it doesn't mean you're weak.
Okay.
Man. It's
It
normal.
is okay.
Yeah.
Completely normal. KD and Ken Scott did a live Instagram live stream where they talked about, and these are like Black alpha males that had this conversation about their mental health and depression. And then Argo J did it. And that was powerful to because these are like, right. Because not only like alpha males, right, that's a thing, but that Black culture is even more, right. It's very machismo. Mm-hmm. And so for them to come out and humanize that was a very powerful thing for them to come out and talk about mental health and how important it is for men to come out. And it's okay. You're not alone. First of all, in fact, I think you'd be surprisingly validated to find out how many men
less alone.
You're very, you feel less alone. Mm-hmm. And the life you save literally could be your own. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And think about your kids, if nothing else. Do it for I always tell people, think about it, right? Because sometimes we'll keep putting ourselves aside for our kids. Do it for your kids if you don't do it for you.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of saving lives, let's talk about OK Boomer, which is yeah, Boomer, right? And the church shooting there in Texas.
So first of all, let me just say that I have taken, as a Gen Xer who sits in the middle, right? And I'm like, yo, millennials, I'm kind of on your side here, but I will leave you with college debt if you guys don't back off the fucking me and stop calling me a boomer.
Yeah.
But I've taken great joy in watching millennials kiss boomers' asses over this. It's just been glory. I'm like, right? That being said, so we all know that Jack is awesome. Okay, so let's just, Jack's awesome. Woo, Jack. Yay, Jack. Hero Jack. Everybody trying to spin this for gun control, you're full of shit. Okay, we know that. Mm-hmm. Here is the narrative that I want you all to move forward, because it's so much more important. And as gun people, we have to stop meeting gun control zealots with pro-gun argument. We have to start backdooring it, and we can use emotional stories, but not be emotional. That my story is an emotional story, and it disarms them, no pun intended, in conversation. But you don't want to get emotional like they do, because that's the argument, right? We need to be logical. Well, that doesn't work because it's not getting in. But those people are such zealots about being social justice warriors that the minute that you present something that could be possibly emotional, it will lower their shields, so to speak, and allow you to get in to plant seeds, because their need to be empathetic and to be the hero about being empathetic to your plight is way stronger than their gun control narrative, right? Because that's what drives their gun control narrative, right? It's the root of it. So we need to get in with that. Man, I need to write that down. That was fucking great.
It'll be recorded on a podcast.
Send it. Well, y'all need to edit that shit, because I don't know how. Andy, get on it. So, because that was good. I've been saying stuff like that, but that line, that's good stuff. So, but that's what somebody make it a clip. That's when you get in with that, because that happened when I confronted Kamala Harris in that little video that went viral. I was in the bathroom afterward, and the women were on their talking points, and I said, well, it's unfortunate she went and talked to a domestic violence survivor. Well, she's busy, and I said, no, I'm the domestic violence survivor. Boom, it immediately went down, because they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then I was able to say, so I don't understand why she doesn't get that these laws take away my ability to defend, and they just stood there like this, right? Fast forward to this shooting, right? There's a connection, I promise. Everybody's focusing on Jack. Don't get me wrong, Jack's fucking baller. Jack's awesome. But what makes Jack even more awesome that people are missing here? Jack was the head of their security. Okay? It's not the fact that he took this guy down. It's the fact that he fucking trained that congregation in crisis management. If you watched how those people acted, that was the win bigger than anything there. Because the minute that they heard that gun, they didn't go running, screaming, and losing their minds. They dropped to the ground, which means that they have had regular active shooter drills, because it was muscle memory for them. The women at the bottom of the screen that you saw running, if you see they look briefly, it's hard to catch, and you have to catch the unedited video of it. Clearly notice that they were clear, right? Because we don't know what's over there, right? We can't see what's over there. So there could have been another shooter for all we knew watching the video. But obviously, because you saw the way everybody else acted, they must have known that they had a clear path and a safe exit. So they did take themselves out of the situation because they could. Above and beyond that, there were 8 other concealed carriers in there? None of them started shooting, which means that they had all been trained to not act, because the minute, Billy Joe stands up across the way, right? JW doesn't know if he's part of that group, and then everybody starts shooting at everybody and becomes a Quentin Tarantino movie, right? So this is what did not happen there, and that's a huge fucking win. Jack had these people trained. The only 2 things that he did wrong in this. So this is where, little known fact, and very few women do this. I actually do. My husband did this for countries for in the Middle East. Fun fact: we're not going into war, and this is not new. So I'll just leave it at that. He spent most of his career in the Middle East, and he did this over there: force protection, threat assessment, right? Breaking into buildings, technical shit. So I've been blessed to have that as my foundation for my skill set. So sometimes I'll talk about stuff and people are like, well, how do you know you weren't in the military? I'm like, no, but I've been trained. I've taken the homegrown training for it. And that's what happened here. So the two biggest breaches that they had here is apparently this guy had been somebody they had been giving food to as a homeless guy or whatever. And he got pissed over money and had made some verbal threats. Error number 1. If they knew that they had some sort of threat, they should have had somebody at the door, and the guy never should have gotten in to begin with. Right? He never should have gotten to the point of the sanctuary. The first entrance, right? Because it was a hallway. Remember, it was a hallway. He never should have made it down that hallway. End of story. They should have stopped him at the entrance, the main door. If they knew that they had some sort of threat somewhere, there was a lack of communication, or that forth. I'm going with lack of communication because Jack had these people too trained. Right. So somewhere it says to me that maybe somebody didn't communicate that this guy, hey, he's made some threats. We need to watch that. I think that is where the breakdown happened there somewhere. Second, if you watch the video, boyfriend number 2 pulls the gun, and it wasn't until he starts to draw that the shooter takes the shot at the first guy. Boyfriend still hesitates, and he lost his life. So I'm not discounting the loss of life here, but that guy literally got both of them killed. Because everybody's like, well, he didn't get the first guy killed. Yes, he did. Because if you watch the video, if you slow it down, he starts to draw and the guy hasn't shot yet. I mean, it's that quick. So you got to watch it. But and of course he saw it, right? The other guy, the bad guy saw it. So those are the 2 breaches in that security protocol that they had. Other than that, man, I just above and those people dropped down. There was some screaming and some yelling. I mean, right? That's scary, right? So you're not going to get everybody to go completely silent. But what it could have been compared to what it was, those people had rehearsed that, and not just once.
Yeah, it
was way too muscle memory. They went down, and it pisses me off that not more people are not acknowledging that. And the fact that everybody, like I said, it did not turn into a Quentin Tarantino movie, which is what easily happens in these situations. And it did. So praise to Jack for that.
Yeah,
other than that, fucking making 357s cool again.
If you guys don't follow We Like Shooting, go check out their podcast on YouTube, and they go through it. They are. They're all assholes. But they did a really good review of the church shooting, which I really agree.
You know what? Don't trust anything Sean says. He doesn't know shit. Okay. You can go onto my page and you can see there's literally video that if you go on their page where he's getting a Monster Energy drink thrown at his head because he's shit-faced drunk. I took that video. Okay. No. So all kidding aside, Sean and the guys, they're actually good friends of mine. And if you go back through, you'll see some videos where we know people and they're like, fucking Carrie, she's a bit like, we're like, we should probably be a little careful when people watch some of these things because they're like, Jesus. Yeah, so they are definitely my buddies. I adore them, and Sean does in fact know his shit.
Yeah, he may or may not have stayed at my house overnight once or twice. So yeah, I got a little experience with Mr. Heron. But anyway,
these people can fucking drink. Like there's enthusiastic amateurs, and then there's pros, and then there's like WLS.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, they should be part of the drinking brothers for sure. But anyway, my point is, so they reviewed that video really, really good on the church shooting. And one thing that he preferenced on the show, and of course, we're going to preference here. This armchair quarterbacking is a thing, but you know what?
Right.
This is how we learn. This is how we learn to get better.
Right.
And just going back to like your things that you noticed, number one was they mentioned that he had a wig and a beard on, and to me, I'm like, man, you guys. If I seen that in my church, because I try to go to church pretty often now. If I seen somebody like that in my church, I kind of think that I would be sitting right next to that dude or right behind him. And as soon as he got up, I'd probably get up right with him. That maybe that's something that I think that I would do. I don't know. I hope that that's what I would do, right?
But that goes back to trusting your instinct, and then you talking yourself out of trusting your instinct, right? Because
Absolutely.
we don't do that as often as we should, right?
For sure. And the second thing was the dude that drew, he drew pretty slow. And I think that reinforces the importance of getting gun training. John Crea of Active Self-Protection was on our show, and he said the statistic out there is like less than 4% of people actually even go out and train with their firearms. That's scary. That's a really
my goal
scary number.
Is to train more, because I don't train nearly as much as I should. And that's not just going to the range and shooting. That's like, you need to go out and actually find good trainers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I had a really good question asked, probably the second best question I've been asked man, I get some good ones. I do a lot of live streaming because I thrive in an I own a day spa. I make my business interacting with people and getting people to talk. So it's a comfortable lane for me, this kind of stuff. And the other question I got asked was after this, and it said, so here's a good question for you. What if it was somebody you knew? Like, would you be able to, right? Because if they knew this guy, like, how well did they know him? Like, at this point, we didn't know that this was the homeless guy that was asking for, that hadn't come out yet. Like, was it, one of the deacons? Was it, one of the guys who was going through divorce and he'd been estranged from the church and he snapped and like you saw him, and right. So there's some valid question to that, right? So I know for me, particularly as a domestic violence survivor, even if it was my husband, and I love my husband, I'd shoot him. I wouldn't hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
My background is different. The person that would probably take me down would be my daughter.
Yeah.
You're right. So we need to be able to address that, right? Like, that was a really powerful question. Actually, my husband presented that. It was my husband that presented that question there, because this is the shit that he has to think about doing what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we talked about it afterward too. I said, I'd shoot you in your fucking face. And he kind of laughed, and he was like, good. I mean, he got it, right? He understands it. And I said, but Emma, my daughter would probably, she'd be the one I'd hesitate.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it's good for us to know who those people might be,
mm-hmm.
so that we can address, okay, so what does that mean that we need to do to mitigate that in other ways? Right. And look at how to solve that problem. These are like our dinner, like this is why I like doing what I do with the awareness and stuff, because it's a lifestyle for us. Because I don't ever want to need to use my gun. Yeah. I've had to draw it. I drew it once in my life. It was scary enough to draw it. I knew I was going to pull the trigger. I knew I was ready, which was a catharsis. It's a homeless guy with a golf club coming up to my car, and I drew, and he saw it and went, and so I got lucky,
mm-hmm.
but I was ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah. Carrie, let's circle it back to the beginning. You talked about condition black that you add into your courses. We saw a little bit of condition black with the lady in the back of the room of the church too, who she just kind of got up and they said that there's really the one that was screaming, literally bloody murder, back and forth running. She literally jumped over the pews, over people. She was in that complete panic of condition black. Like her body took over. She didn't know what she was doing. She saw the pure panic of somebody that there was talk that I think that was maybe a father or a close family member. And she went completely condition black, and she was uncontrolling flailing and that's the scary one there.
It is. And it's hard to say, right? Because everybody else was so trained. So there's a lot of questions around that we'll never know those. And nor do we need to. But, I guess maybe not. I guess if we're looking at it as a teaching point, perhaps, was she newer to the church and hadn't been through as much? What was her background? Did she have violence in her background? Those are things that, in a congregation in particular, or a office workspace, that you might want to know certain things about people to know how they may subconsciously react because they can't help it, right? Because PTSD particularly wires your brain to react differently. Like you legit, so when your brain heals from post-traumatic stress disorder, the neurons actually rewire themselves. So when you say to somebody who's having an anxiety attack that's triggered by PTSD, you need to well, first of all, never telling a woman to calm down, that never ends well. But but particularly an individual with PTSD, you can't deal with them the same way, because you can't say, don't be so emotional. They can't control it, nor do they acknowledge, and so we don't know what her background was, right?
Right.
So churches, you can tend to get in people's business a little bit more. So that may be a good learning point for that. Or it could be that she was new, right? Maybe she never had anything, but she was newer to the church and hadn't been through as much drill for muscle memory. But I think it would be good to be able to address, with any sort of defense plan that you have active, any drill. I don't like to refer to it as active shooter drill, honestly, because first of all, it's feeding into their language, right? They pro-gun or the anti-gun people.
Right.
Second, you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice in your lifetime than to be in one of these situations. However, if you're in a restaurant and the chef snaps and brings out a knife, right, that's you're more likely, or an earthquake or a fire. So I like to actually refer to them as crisis situations. And in my classes, I refer to them as crisis situations, which can be everything from an active shooter to an earthquake. And of course, the first thing I'm like, do herd mentality will get you killed. Herd mentality got more people killed in that Vegas thing concert than actual gunshots did. And people they add that statistic that 80 whatever people died, of like 20 or 30. It was actually higher than that. I think it was like 30 or 40 were actually tramplings, but they're not going to tell you that, right? And they were not people that were shot at all. So, but they love to mess up with those numbers. So that might be an interesting conversation to have, right? Surrounding what does it look like when we're going through these crisis trainings and protocols, like writing these protocols. Is this a good talking point to have the conversation around what it looks like if we do have people like that in our congregations, and how do we address that?
Yeah, so they brought that up, and we like shooting too, and they had Skinny Medic on. So Jeremy and we've taken at least, I don't even know, 6, 7 amazing dude, right? And the one thing that he mentioned on there,
he's just endorsed my program and is giving me a code. So when you purchase his products, you'll get 15% to be the female.
Even better. Good deal. Yeah. So you'll have to add that into the show notes. But he mentioned the most important thing was somebody like that, and which takes training to make you think about it, because you're like, holy shit, I didn't think of that. Go give her a task. Hey, go get me a towel. Run outside. Call 911.
Change their focus. Yeah. Exactly. Change their focus.
Absolutely. Change their focus.
She was done, right?
Unfortunately,
totally she was done. Like there was, once you're to that stage, you ain't getting a towel. Like she was already there. And
well, the other part,
well,
the other part too is let's talk about what we talked about earlier about love, right? Love's a strong thing. If this person, even me, okay, even you, Jeremy, let's say we're in this situation, we're in church, we've had tons of training, medical training, firearms training, and you just see your wife or your husband or your daughter just get blown away, right? Is your training going to be strong enough to be able to ignore that and start trying to do what you need to do? Man, we don't know. That's the question. I don't know.
Yeah,
so
I believe.
Here's a really good point about that. I have suffered 2 concussions within 11 months of each other. The first one, thank God my husband wasn't here for the second one. Well, that's not true, because I could have used him here, because that was actually the worst one. I stepped backwards, fell. Anyway, long story short, I had a small gash like this in my head, right here, and it was bleeding, and blood. I mean, it was little, but you know how that shit is, right? Blood when it's in your head. And he became an asshole, because it was either for him, he was ready to throw up at the sight of somebody else's blood, which I thought, like, you fucking train people to detain terrorists. You're an interrogator for the military. Like, how do you? He's like, waterboarding doesn't involve blood. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Right, fair enough. But but it was my blood, right? He can handle his own all day, but he just tripped offline, right? He really struggled. And then it was his wife was hurt, and he really struggled with that. So it was either become emotional or become a fucking asshole. And I was pissed at the time. Hindsight, I'm glad, like looking at it now, especially fast forward all these years later, knowing the experience and training I have, I'm like, okay, that's definitely where he needed to be. But and that was just a simple head knock, right? So where would it be? Even the next year when the next year it was like I split it way open and was in really bad, like he'd have it'd have been a mess. So in that situation, where would he be, right? Now for him, I would guess he wouldn't freeze because his is muscle memory from literally a career of being trained, but he'd become an asshole, right? And then it's if you're PTSD trigger, right? I need to start thinking about those types of things where I'm like, okay, don't be pissed at him when he becomes an asshole. He's trying to save you, right? So there's this is a rabbit hole, right? This is one of those, and it's a good rabbit hole to be in, right? This is a good headspace to be in with this kind of conversation. But man, it could go on and on and on about how we address it. But the reality is that maybe, let's just say best case scenario today. And by today, I mean, let's just say for the next 12 to 36 months, 1 to 3%, maybe if we're lucky, 5% will be those people that will know how to act properly in a crisis situation, right? So we need to not only think about ourselves, but people around us. And like you're talking about, how do we deal with, Black mama that loses her mind and was like jumping everywhere, right? So how do we deal with that? And do you not neutralize them, but like, do you neutralize, like that's one of those things, like, do you just like stun them? like just until they can, right? Like the old movies, like slap them when they're going crazy and like, you know what I mean? Kind of a thing. I mean, don't do that. Like nobody do that. Okay. I'm just, don't.
Do it.
Do not abuse your spouse, even in emergency situations.
Black woman. What'd you say?
Said, do not abuse your spouse, even in emergency situations.
And never slap an angry Black woman, because that shit ain't gonna end well for you. So let me just be clear about that. But but that is something to think about with this. And I should call Sean. I'd love to. Maybe I should or mention that to him, that we had this conversation. I've been on his show, but to bring it back on as a woman who does this from my perspective, I'll text him when we're done. I mean, because there's women that teach situational awareness. And I would love to meet them. So if y'all do know them, by all means. I don't know many women. I don't know any that teach it to the levels that I do with threat assessment as well, and understanding that kind of level. But it's who I'm married to, and I've chosen to engage myself in that conversation because it's fascinating. It's honestly, at the beginning, it was fascinating to me. I never thought it would be something I'd end up doing as outreach, but it just in the beginning, it's just super fascinating to like learn how to clear a room. And how that can end up being something that could save my life later. It's kind of weird how you think about that kind of stuff. It's like we look at it, and even gun people, right? Anti-gun people, like they love to go watch them some John Wick, right? Mm-hmm. Or they love to watch them some Bourne, but they're not going to take the time to even learn how to, do an assessment, let alone learn how to use a gun. Mm-hmm. And it's cool on TV, but that shit can actually save your life. So.
Yeah. Judging by her reaction, I would be surprised if one of the two victims was not related to her somehow, or if her immediate reaction was. That wouldn't surprise me one bit if it was a husband or father or brother.
Interestingly enough, though, I would have thought that would have come out by now.
Yeah, well, it's the 24 hours news cycle. It's old news,
right? Which is sad. And I do have a mission of not letting not letting that die from the skill set and the preparedness piece. So it is actually, I'm going to be putting that video into my PowerPoint.
It's one of
my classes to talk about the importance of preparedness.
Where, on our side, there's this push, the 72-hour rule. For me, right. 72 hours later, it's already forgotten news. Nobody cares, because 72 hours later, let's be honest, it's the next freaking thing. It's the next tragedy. It's the next shooting. It's the next tweet. It's the next whatever, right? And then we miss this opportunity to have a conversation amongst ourselves where other people can participate, even if they're just reading through. Like, I'll get into, less now, but a couple years ago, I would get into drawn out discussions, debates, arguments on Facebook, what have you. And it's, I would ask myself, and Andy would, hey man, why are you doing that? Why are you engaging? And the conversation would be, it's not to prove my point. It's so that where my opinion is based in, if somebody's going to sit here and read through these comments, they're going to glean that information, right? They're going to take away something. I know I'm not going to convince that guy or that girl that to go out and be able to defend themselves, right? But it's the bystander that's just going to sit back and take that information in, right? And it would be a disservice to, I believe it's a disservice to my mission to allow it to go unanswered, right? Because if it goes unanswered and then somebody rests on that, right? And had I done a better job trying to convince that quiet third party that, hey, you really need to go out and get this training, or you need to, not even training, right, but you need to take steps to defend yourself, right? I'm failing. And with these active shooter things, everybody, oh, what's his motive? And I don't give a shit what the dude's motive was, right? It doesn't matter if he was a right-wing extremist, if he was a left-wing extremist. It doesn't matter if he was
blame, as opposed to dealing with the root of the issue.
Yeah, and the root of the issue, if somebody walks into your church and starts shooting people indiscriminately, his motives, I guarantee you, there wasn't a single person in that church that gave a shit why he was doing what he was doing. What they wanted was what Jack did. And that was for somebody to stop the threat. And you have to be able to stop that threat, because you're out here preparing for an active shooter. It's more likely that you're going to be at a restaurant, or you're going to be out and about, and it's going to be a domestic violence situation that spills over. And now you're an uninterested third party that's all of a sudden thrust into this situation, this circumstance, right? It's not that's what's more likely. Like, oh, you think some wacko is going to walk into your restaurant and shoot it up? No, I don't think that. I'm prepared for it if it does.
You're more likely to be hit by lightning twice in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, your chances of that happening are like 1 in 16 million.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's like mauled by a bear. Yo, that's kind of legit where I live. Just saying.
Yeah, but who's to say it's not going to be? Who's to say it's not going to be a jealous, estranged spouse that's following their estranged spouse, and now that person is out having dinner with their friends, and that other person, the abuser, right? That other person is going to show them, right? There's a so I'm a full-time restaurant manager, and something that happened in one of our restaurants years ago was a gentleman and his girlfriend. They were breaking up, right? They were going through it on again, off again, on again, off again. He thought that she was having a relationship with one of her coworkers, and then one night after work came into work and shot them both, right? Like, that's not, nobody's surprised by that story. And we're less surprised now than we were a few years ago when somebody decides to shoot up a church or a school. That's the unfortunate thing, right? So we have to understand that
it's on the decline.
Yeah, it's on the decline, but it's top of mind. The big thing that we can say about Jack is he had the tools and the skills to do what needed to be done to save lives that day. Can that be said about other people? What I'm telling people, man, is I personally think it's very fortunate that he was able to stop that threat with one shot, right? Because had he not had a clear line of sight, had they been standing in praise instead of after communion, right? And he decided now, instead of where everybody's on the ground, he's picking off people as they're standing, they start to run, right? The chaos that ensues, what happens then? But the thing that stands out and people need to remember is, had it not been for Jack, right? If Jack decided to listen to everybody and to the naysayers, you don't need a gun to defend yourself. You're paranoid. You really think somebody's going to come into your church and shoot it up. You're just a gun nut, right? Had he listened to that, right? And those other concealed carriers listened to that, right? Or they didn't take it seriously. How likely is it that somebody's going to come into your church and shoot it up? We don't need this active shooter training. We don't need to put our armed congregation through this training, because it's not going to happen here. That happens.
You need to do it anyway, because I can tell you, you can say your gut. You can say, here's what needs to kill that argument. And part of what we need to put out there is, let's be realistic. You can say that your church is a gun-free zone all you want. There's going to be the chances of somebody being in that church still concealed carrying is pretty fucking high. Do you want, whether you have security or not, like, do you want that guy to be there or not? First of all. Second, if there's more than one, do you want them going Quentin Tarantino on you in there, like turning it into the Wild West? Because without some sort of protocol, that is going to happen, because the hero complex is going to kick in. And more often than not, unfortunately, that's probably also the dickheads that don't have training.
The wannabe
right?
hero. Yeah.
Right. And so it's going to not end well for a lot of people. So you need some sort of security protocol regardless, just to mitigate that piece of it, if for nothing else. Right. I just, I don't get how people wouldn't want to do that. I read a really interesting article a while back about the safety plans, right? Putting safety plans in place, active shooter. And this was a family. And I wish I could remember the name. It was a woman that wrote this article, but I guess this husband and wife, they do training together. And I guess they're pretty, like, I was really early on in this, so I can't remember who they were, but from what I gather, you guys would know who this family is. And she was talking about their plan and having a family plan together for crisis situation. And she said, consider changing your gender roles. My first instinct was as a mother, right? I mean, I literally physically felt it in my stomach. I was like, ugh, right? Because our motherly instinct is grab the children, right? The guy's the hero, right? The father will stand up and defend, and the mother grabs the children. She said, we had to train. She said, shooting capability wise, skill training wise, she goes, we're almost equal. And I would say women tend to be a little bit better once you're on equal training. Women are better shots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is still funny that they're still treated like shit by men. I'm like, ugh. Anyway, whole different subject. But she said, so they have trained their family that her husband will grab the children, all three of their children, and run, and she will stay and fight. And my first thought was, whoa. And then I thought, Carrie, feminism, right? My first thought was, this went back to like badass fucking feminist attitude right here. Like I can't sit here as a feminist and not say that I don't support that 100%. Above the logic itself is great, but there's, as from that woman thing, that woman's right thing, this is fucking legit, right? So she said he is bigger and stronger, and the children were small. He says he can physically pick all three children up on his own and run with them, whereas I can't do that. In addition, he is by a substantial amount the primary financial breadwinner of the home. And if one of us has to be missing, he is in a better position to provide for this family. And I was like, right? I mean, how profound is that thought to actually challenge gender role when you're dealing? I thought that's pretty fucking cool. So if you and your wife train together regularly and you have children in particular, that is, I mean, obviously if you guys are together, fucking Batman and Robin that shit, right? Yeah. Like you guys, like, kids there with you, just both of you go at it, right? Because the chances then are even better, right? If both of you are well trained. I am not. I have the tool. I do not have these skills yet. You know what I mean? But I have the high level skill, really high level, that I'm going to see that fucker coming most likely. So they can still get the drop on me. Nothing's 100%, but chances are I'm going to see that shit.
Yeah.
So, so I'm lucky in that respect. But that was a really profound, and I like to get that out a lot in conversations with people to make people think about that, right? But when I mentioned that to you, like as fathers, right? I mean, you guys are fathers, right? Aren't you? Both of you guys are fathers, right? Your first thought was probably like, protect the woman, right? Protect the woman. No. And it's just that we have that inherent, that little gut thing. And so she said that they had to consciously train.
Yeah, I call bullshit.
Fight about that last year, actually.
I call bullshit, Carrie, because my wife's stronger than me, and she makes more money than me. She makes more than me too. So I mean, I guess I'm gonna have to fight.
You better stay and start fighting. Kids are running.
It's gonna be my 6-year-old son.
I need to meet your wife. Yeah, so it's
4-year-old daughter raining down.
But that is the thing, right? So sit and have that conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've not met Stephanie's husband, but Stephanie ain't no joke. She's a big girl. You know what I mean? She is 6 foot tall and she is a strong broad, right? Yeah. And I'm guessing her skills with a gun are probably pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
So would she be better than her husband? I mean, who knows, right? So that's nobody's business but y'all's.
Right.
But I can also tell you, depending on the mindset of that dude, it could mess with, like, they could pause just quick enough when a woman's coming at him instead of a man. I mean, you don't know, right? I mean, that could actually work to your advantage. You know what I mean? Because a split second in those situations can make all the difference. And the minute he's like, that shit happens sometimes. So, it was just I challenge everybody to have that conversation. In your homes. I just thought that was a cool conversation.
You got a team build with your family. just to
Family
put it all in
plan.
perspective. Definitely have a plan. In our concealed carry class, I ask our students who watches The Walking Dead, and unfortunately it's getting less and less now. And I say, who knows?
Stupid.
Who knows Carol? Who knows who Carol is, right? And Carol, in the beginning, she went through a rough life. She had a husband that beat the hell out of her.
Like Carol.
Yeah, exactly. So her daughter got bit by a zombie, and they had her in a barn, and then they opened the barn, and they actually had to kill the daughter. And then she went down this road of, what's that?
She choked, remember?
Yeah, she totally choked, right?
Yeah.
But then later on, who was Carol? Carol was the lady that was walking down the street alone, and then like 4 dudes would come out and attack her, and she'd be, please don't hurt me, please, I'm just a woman. And the next scene over is her walking off with all their guns and all the dudes dead, right? And so like that's one thing I tell them, like we have kind of a plan in my family to where if something like that was to come up, we get robbed or whatever, I turn to her and I say, Carol, just give him what he wants. Her name isn't Carol, but she knows.
That's cool.
Hey, it's time to go into Carol mode. And who knows, there may be a day where I'm Carol. You know what I mean?
Right.
So who knows? I mean, I think having plans for families, as we've talked about, I go to church often, and my wife is really good at picking people out that conceal carry. She'll nudge me and she'll be like, that dude's carrying. And I'm like, where? I'm like, oh shit, yeah, he is carrying. Good eye, So
it's interesting you brought that up, because I talk about with situational awareness, and the more like, because you'll go through this, like in my classes I talk about this, like you'll go through this phase, right? Like you're here and you're learning and you've made the decision you're going to learn, right? And then you go through like a phase where you're fucking paranoid of everybody, right? And like everything and like you get, and I'm like, just stick with it and dismiss people that tell you you're paranoid. Just work through it. You'll get there. Then you'll get to the other side. And then you get way over here, and it gets almost, I mentioned this to my husband the first time, and he's like, and that's when he knew that I was there, right? When I was in the right mindset long-term, was when I messaged him. I was waiting for him at the airport, and I was in a different spot because we had separated to get bags or whatever. So I was in a different spot, and I said, do you ever feel like it's very Matrixy? Like you're watching the Matrix, like you're the one that took the pill and you're watching. And he said, you're there. Because once you get to that point, you're like, whoa. And because you become so aware of how unaware people are. But the advantage to that now becomes, right? Because now when you get to that next level, not only do you see the people that you want to get the fuck away from because they're going to be dangerous to you, you start to identify the people that are going to shake it down with you. When right, because they're doing the same shit, right? They're standing back, they're watching, they're saying, like, you start to notice that stuff too. So it's not just that you notice the people that are oblivious, right? Because like that's common, right? That's most people. You're going to notice people you need to get crazy black woman in the church, right? That I shouldn't say crazy, but the one that she went to black, right? She went into the black. You'll start to notice and be able to predict who those people are going to be, so that you do not put yourself near them if you can avoid it. But then you'll start to notice the people also. And it gets a little, so that's when he knew I was there. It's like, I literally felt detached in that one moment, right? It was like a moment of clarity kind of thing in those. And it was kind of a weird thing, but it was cool. I mean, it was cool to get there and to know that I'm at that level of awareness of the people around me. Yeah, and like your audience comes up too, right? I mean, I can sit and text somebody and I'm still like, I'm just hearing everything more around me than I used to and stuff. And it's a blessing and a curse. Sometimes it's a little annoying because it's just like, sometimes you don't want to be listening to people's conversations, but sometimes like you get that one piece that normally you wouldn't, but then you're like, oh, well, I don't know, what does she do? You kind of want to stick it in a little bit more than you should,
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story, man. We're already 2 hours and 17 minutes into this podcast, just because it's been so great and I love it. And we could probably.
This has been a really good one. I've enjoyed this, and I've not felt strained or like, ugh, are we done yet?
Yeah, right.
It's been good. So
yeah, I'll tell you,
people watching me are feeling that way too.
It's because I haven't talked much. That's why it's. I haven't talked much. That's why it's going so well.
Oh, I talk a lot.
No,
it's me, and it's like.
Yeah, I talk a lot. That's why my live streams are usually end up being 3 hours.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a funny story, and I'll shut up for the rest of the podcast. But we were at church, and we walked out of church the other day. It was me and my wife and my mother-in-law. And as we were walking out, I just happened to, as always, scanning the crowd, and I looked over to the right, There was a guy there, kind of beard, scruffy looking dude. Noticed he had a military shirt on. He had military boots, and I looked over at him, and he kind of nodded, and I nodded at him too, and smiled. And I just looked over to see if my wife watched, and I said, "Me and him just had a moment." She goes, "I saw that." And I was like, "Yeah, that dude.
You'll catch it. Yeah,
he's the one that I'm gonna go. Hey, this is the guy that's gonna help me." It was just really, really obvious.
And you'll get to where you even notice the tact of douches versus the legit
totally.
guys too. Like you'll start, those guys actually are really obvious.
Oh yeah. We have a guy in our church. He's a concealed carry instructor. I won't call him out, but he sits almost directly by us. Most of the time in church, he's asleep. And then every time he leans over to shake somebody's hand, his 45 XD pops out of his really, really tight shirt. And he's a bigger guy than me. And I'm like, dude, come on, bro. Like, you're pretty obvious. You know what I mean? So
let's not
stop it.
XD, by the way, we have a Springfield 45 in this house, and I love that gun, even though people shit on that gun. I love shooting that thing. It shoots very smooth. The grip is super corny. Like they need to, like that thing is cheesy. But so we're actually going to change the grip on it. But I actually don't mind that 45 thing.
Whatever works for you.
Grip on it.
No, I don't carry it. It's not my carry, but I don't mind. Like people shit on that gun. I don't understand why. My husband and I, neither one of us, were like, we don't get why people shit on this gun. That it's really not horrible. There's definitely worse out there, for sure.
Like Glocks, right, Jeremy?
I hate Glocks. I hate Glocks.
I just got my 15 round mags for my Glock 48, and my +5 extension will be here in a couple days. I'm gonna have 35 rounds between two mags and a single stack 9.
Did you just start your period too?
I did. I was going to ask you if you guys changed the grip on the Springfield.
That's really okay. We're going to talk about cocaine and hookers next too. Is this
yeah. But I want to know if you guys changed the grip on the Springfield. Where are you going to hold it? That if you get rid of the grip.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't know. We haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, we were kind of talking about that. Adam's like, for $400 or whatever he paid for it too, for like the value for it. Like it was good. I mean, I don't carry a 45. He doesn't carry a 45. We just keep it for home, but we picked up a new, he doesn't want me to tell him it's new. So that's, I don't even know what it is, but that thing's really nice. But we got an FN, was the FN that we've got there is, see, I'm not a gun girl, you guys, like I'm still learning this stuff. So, but I like that FN. That's actually one of my favorite guns to shoot. That one, and believe it or not, my truth pistol, the Katie's gun, which was on the HK VP9 SK platform. I love that gun, and everybody I've ever taken out to shoot it loves
the truth.
Right? Yeah, because it's not really, other than the grip, it's not an HK anymore, right? Because the barrel has been changed, and the slide is all different. It's all completely different. But I've yet to meet anybody who shot that's not gone. This is a nice shooting gun. So I have it over there if you guys don't see it. But it's
It's like the fact that Glocks. It's not a Glock, but it'll fit the Glock holsters.
My husband calls Glocks like the Toyota Camry of, right? They're solid, they're inexpensive, they run. You can accessorize them. you can put the spur on the front. And
you can always put a $5,000 stereo system in them, though.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's actually a really good metaphor. But I don't like the way. So when I was blessed that my first day at range, I got to go to, or SHOT Show last year, I got to go to range day. Thank you, Betty and Veronica, for that. Because let's just face it, I'm a chick, right? I mean, I don't know that a dude would have been offered that extra ticket as easily, right? So whatever, I got to go talk to my girlfriend, who's a badass, right? She's an armor. She's actually a gunsmith for an armorer for Arrow. She builds her all of her own shit. And I called her. I said, look, I got a ticket to range day. She goes, are you fucking kidding me? Right? Because she works for Arrow and couldn't go. And I was like, and I'm okay being green out there and asking questions, but I don't want to look like a complete idiot. And I've never held an AR. I've never held these kind of things. I've never put a 45 in my hand. I need you to keep me from looking stupid. So I went over to her house and I was like, she female John Wick. Their house, like 900 square feet. It's real small, cute, adorable house, super girly looking, right? I'm like, where the fuck do these guns keep coming from? Like, where? Like, do you have another like 2,000 square feet under this? Because they kept coming. They both work for Arrow, right? I mean, so and they've been in the gun industry. Their careers have been the guns, right? So, but I was like, where do these things keep coming out of? Like, they just kept coming. It kept coming. So, I got to go out and shoot Glock, and there wasn't, and that's right. They had just introduced that X line, right, with the more narrow, I think they're single stack, right, instead to make them more concealable. Mm-hmm. I hated those guns. I didn't like the grip, which is what most people don't like, right? Because it sits at a little bit of a different angle. I just kept dropping the front, dropping the barrel, and they just don't. They feel very awkward in my hands. I am a SIG girl. I do like SIGs. I carry a SIG every day. I also have the 365, which I'll carry as an alternative sometimes. And I do like HK.
Yeah,
I do like it. I gotta say, I do like that gun. And again, it's not, but I've shot HK. So HK was the first, other than my little 380, my Abigail, my 238. The HK VP9 SK is the first gun I ever put in my hand that I ever said, can I have another magazine? Can I have another magazine? Can I have another magazine? Like I did not, I just wanted to keep shooting it. I could actually hit the steel with it. Everything about the gun just worked in my hand. I really like that gun. And I enjoy shooting that one, but I enjoy that Springfield, but that FN, I do like those a lot. FN is nice. And then my girlfriend we went shooting the other day together, and she brought a Canik. It was not a Canik. She brought a CZ out. And that I think is going to be my next purchase. I'm a bougie bitch apparently with guns. I've come to realize, and I wouldn't have known that a year ago, right? I would have been like, oh, that one looks cool, when I don't have any concept of guns, right? Except the first gun I've ever purchased was a Kimber, the 9mm. I have the Sapphire. So, and I get teased about that a lot because it's like a 1911 platform, but which I like. All of my guns, I've got that. I've got the hammer, right? I got that kind of.
Well, you're prepared for World War III.
The dual thing or whatever. Anyway, so for whatever reason I'm comfortable with that. But I was looking at them both. The Kimber fit in my hand. I was comfortable with it. I liked it, and it was so pretty. And I just right. This is my first gun purchase ever. Right. So this is about four years ago or so. My first gun purchase, and it was like $300-400 more. And my husband's like, and I'm picking them up, and so I pick up the one that's not the blue one, and then I go this. And at this point, I have no fucking idea what. Right. I Glock and Smith and Wesson, right? I don't know guns, right? At all. And I pick up this, and I was like, oh, I like the way this one feels in my hand. He goes, of course you would. And I said, what does that mean? He goes, you picked the fucking BMW of guns. Like you literally just and didn't even know you did it. I always pick the most expensive pair of shoes when I walk in. He said, you did it with a gun. So then he says, do you really need the blue one? I'm like, for $300, fuck it, give me the blue one. Like if this is gonna be my first gun, just give me the goddamn thing. So that was my first gun. And so my concept of gun prices and stuff, right? That one was like, I don't know, $1,500 or something. I was like, I didn't have, to me, that's what they were, right? So when I walked in and I have a little Bursa 380, and I bought it because it was like $300. I'm like, what is it?
They make these? Yeah.
I'm like, I could throw it away. Oh, sorry. Never mind. Just kidding.
I think there are
cocaine.
two brands of guns that people regret as their first gun purchase: Springfield and Kimber, right? And I don't
regret my Kimber purchase. I don't regret it.
We get people, and it's usually, they show up with a Kimber, but it's like a BMW. If you know how to properly maintain an exotic car, you're not going to have any problems with it.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
But if you're
definitely right.
If you're doing oil changes at 5,000 miles and you're not changing the brake pads and you don't fucking take it through the car wash and moisturize the leather, you're gonna have issues with it. And it's like generally the people
you can drive it, or you can have a Toyota Camry.
Yeah, you want to buy, if you don't appreciate a BMW, you're not going to go out and buy a BMW. Right. I think what people do with Kimbers is they buy a Kimber because it's Kimber, right? And now you got the BMW of the gun world, but you don't freaking appreciate it, so you don't take care of it.
Yep.
But the other thing about
that too, and what Curtis Hallstrom from VSO Gun Channels, he hates Kimber, but he himself says he hates 1911s. So I have a picture of me in a suit holding this gun, right, like this, and so he's got an autograph it's a whole joke between us. So if you ever talk to Curtis, ask him say Carrie says you love Kimber 1911s. So because my husband has a 45, he has 1911s, the 45 cal, and I love to shoot that thing. It's beautiful, but there is that level to it, that there is a little bit more to that. But what Curtis was saying is that was never the case initially, that they used to be like a gold standard of even manufacturing and shooting and stuff, but the more popular they become, like a lot of things do, right? The quality started to sacrifice. And he's speaking, if you don't know who he is, that dude's like all tech, right? Everything is about operation and manufacturing and how that kind of works. So he's looking at it from that side. But yeah, I don't regret it. I do love shooting that gun. It is a little bit more like that. It is a little bit more of that bougie. You got to kind of baby it a little bit more. And I don't clean my guns. I make my husband do it. So I'm okay with that. So, but it's not my go-to. It's definitely my recreation piece. And that's just simply because it's so big, because it is a little bigger.
Timbers are coming back around. You know, they just, you mentioned it a little bit. We have a really good gun store here, BMC Tactical, and I talked to the owner. And Kimbers, when they first came out, they were amazing. They're really, really good guns. And then their QC went away, and then now they're coming back. So,
well, I think that's everything. Cycles, right? I mean, I'm sure the Glock probably went through a phase. Like every manufacturer goes through that phase. Shut up. Every manufacturer goes through. Don't drink Kool-Aid. Every manufacturer goes through that phase. I think where they, you know, and I mean, I've owned a business for 25 years, and you know, we go through those ebbs and flows. You know, where we get in a rut and then come back around and realize we need to revamp. And I think that's pretty common of business. So, yeah. So it's fun for me. This is a journey. So if you watch my social media, you get to see that, right? Because a lot of advocates I've noticed that just work the advocacy side of this don't shoot very much. Interestingly, because you don't need to even own a gun to be pro 2A or to fight for the rights. Or you watch, particularly the women, right? They're like, follow me on my journey for guns, right? And then they'll put up the little pro gun right meme or whatever, right? But like I'm out there speaking and fucking quit my job to do this, and you know, and actually literally trying to educate women and create this culture. But then you also get to watch this journey. So it's kind of fun. I had my friend MK, he actually made the comment. He said, you know, it's great. He says, because you're actually practicing what you preach with that. Like you're out there training and you're learning, and we get to watch you learn. So like when I went to Katie's event last year, I had never drawn from a holster in my life. And I was intimidated as hell because I'm standing next to all of these, you know, some of the best shooters in America were standing there next to me, but we were all doing the same thing. And all practicing the same drills that was literally just slow pull and just being, and it was super cool. So I'm my friend Mark, he's a YouTuber guy, Fit and Fire. I don't know if you know who that is, but I met him last year, and he's become a good friend. So he and I are going to go range day together this year, and he's going to film for me again, because it's going to be fun for people. We're going to compare, like, to see where I was at range day last year, and how I held a gun and how awkward I was, and the difference where it is now, because I was shooting rifles like this, you know, now I know to bring them up here. Right. So I think it'll be fun to do some little montage videos of like where I was. And I don't even train the way I should, but just, I don't flinch anymore. That was Corinne Mosier, by the way. She did that. I kept flinching. Now, if it's a new gun I've never touched, I think my husband says that's pretty common until you know what it does, right? People tend to be like, but nothing like I used to. And that was Corinne. Corinne taught me a couple of tricks that nobody else, for whatever reason, the way they communicated, couldn't get it to me. But I don't anymore. It doesn't hurt when you're shooting the Combat Master. Just so you know, because I'm going to get one of those Combat Masters. $4,000 gun. And there's a reason it shoots so beautifully. Woo. But I learned that. And so I know that when we see those videos of me a year ago, I'm going to go back and look at them, and I'm probably just like, you know, terrified. And then now where I'm at now, where I can just get up there and knock it out. And so I think it'll be fun for people to see that. So my goal this year is to get out and actually get more comfortable with training, and actually do some of the ugly training, and to do combative weapons too. That's one of the things I'm going to learn. I've gotten into tack pens. I'm kind of geeking out about tack pens a little bit. And I think for me, like with what I do, particularly dealing with people that are scared a lot, like to me, these have become a thing that, like, this is a gateway drug for me with women that are scared to defend themselves. Women usually have a pen on them, right? I've got a cool one with a flashlight, right? I mean, this to me, and if you can learn how to train to use that as a weapon, especially if it's a tack pen, and some of these are beautiful. Like I'm geeking out. Like, of course, me, right? I go into the BMW where I'm like, ooh, look at this titanium $400 one, right? And my husband's like, really? I'm like, but look at it, right? And it's got a blade. It's got a glass cutter in it, you know. So this is kind of a geeky thing for me. But I think I'm going to design. I need to find somebody who wants to make it for me. But I think I want to design my signature tack pen. Because I think this is a good gateway self-defense tool for women that are scared. So this is kind of one of the things and I want to go train with that. And Caslin is actually somebody I'm going to go train with and Rob from McDojo Life that runs that super funny McDojo Life where he calls out so he's a friend of mine. And we're going to actually do a video together about the negative impact of weekend warrior hand-to-hand training for women. Because like rad classes, don't ever take them, ladies. If you get women watching this, don't take those. Do not go hand-to-hand unless it's a lifestyle. And so he and I are going to do some work on that. But he's going to work with me a little bit with combative weapons. And
William April talks about that in a seminar, and they actually did a study and said it showed that women, after doing the fighting the guy in the red suit, were less confident and more likely to be victimized than the women who had it.
Absolutely. I would love for you to send me that if you wouldn't mind, because I'm not going to remember that. But or if they do walk out with a false sense of security, right, they're going to walk out with that. I know how to take care of myself. If you I mean, your gun, realistically, like Jack clearly was that guy, right? That was as easy as blinking and breathing to him, which is why he was able to execute. Whereas other boyfriend, that's what got him killed. It wasn't for him. Great example of what training does muscle memory wise. But even more so is that hand-to-hand, because they're on you, right? Especially as a woman, you're already at a disadvantage of size. So I don't want your blood on me. If you're at 20 feet descending, I'm going to shoot you. Like, end of story. Like, and I clearly, like I said, I had to draw. I knew I would have pulled that trigger. Like, for me, that was a cathartic moment. Like, could I do it? Yes, I'm there. So I don't want your blood on my shit. Like, I'm good. So, but for some women, they're not okay with that, and that's okay. So we need to make sure that we're giving them these options. But it's also important that we emphasize the significance training with those things even more so, because they'll freeze, because they not only will the fear scare them, right, but they're thinking, right, about what it is. What did I learn? Oh, I need to do this, and it's too late, right? It's too late. So, I talk about that in my classes. So y'all were talking about just so you know, since we're talking about being bougie and 1911s, I'm currently my custom Nighthawk is in the process of.
Wow.
I don't know if Tim Herron is still listening, but he has a couple of Nighthawks.
Fucking Steve does. Steve's got they're one of his sponsors, I think. I think they sponsor his classes and stuff. But yeah, so I ran into first of all, I adore the Nighthawk guys, like all the guys that work for them. They're just, it's like my husband says, they about as country as a chicken coop, and they are. But they're absolutely awesome guys. So, and it's rare, right? I gotta be honest, I'm very chip on my shoulder about men, and like, this is what you should start with. Mm-hmm. But there was just something at Mickey. I don't know if you know these guys, but Mickey's the big guy that works for them. And I don't know if it was just his demeanor, if it was that Southern gentlemanliness, but he didn't come across as condescending at all. And I walked up and I'm looking at these things, and these things, right, you could hate. And I know people that hate 1911s, and they're like, oh, Nighthawks, because these things are fucking cool. I mean, they're just art, right? Because for those of you that don't know, they're watching one gunsmith. From the minute you place the order to the end is how those things are made. So, right. So they are art. I mean, they're gorgeous. And there's the mechanism. I mean, everything about those things are beautiful. But he said, Mickey, he says, oh, you need the counselor. This one's going to be good for you. And I had the brief woman thing, and then it just was gone, because it wasn't presented in a way that it was like, oh, here, honey. It was, and I picked that thing up, and it was absolutely like the glove on my hand, like, and not OJ's. So it was age test. Age test. So so I just, in fact, messaged Chris the other day to see where it was in the process. So we're right about in the middle.
Nice. When you get time, Carrie, check out Republic Forge. They actually build these 911s here locally in Albuquerque, which, man, Nighthawk Custom, Republic Forge, awesome, beautiful, beautiful guns.
Well, but, and there's another one, right? Who the guys that started? My husband knows the name of them, and I don't know this, but the guys that started Nighthawk worked for this other company.
Kimber.
And it's not. Who is it? Kimber.
Kimber.
Yeah, no, but I can't remember what that company is, and so I guess they're a big 1911 company too. But yeah, so we'll have to talk guns. Not that I know a lot about talking guns, but we got to talk about 1911, right? We got to my Nighthawk. You guys going to NRAM?
Nope, I'm holding out for No Other Choice with Kevin Dixie in May. So
I'll bring my Nighthawk to
nice
Katie.
to brag about.
You gotta if you want to do some.
My husband's way weirder about that than me. I'm like, no, I let people shoot my guns and stuff. So you can shoot my truth pistol, and nice. I'll probably bring my POF, my AR that was designed by Frank's wife. His wife. So I got to tour the facility, and I have that one. I have the Revolution. But Wonder, that AR was named after, or not named after, his wife designed that. So it's light, and the grips are small, and a little bit smaller for it. I fucking love shooting that rifle. So I thought, what the hell? I might as well, if I'm taking one gun, if you're taking one, you just might as well take a big case and go, right?
Yeah.
It's all the same bullshit, especially in Seattle. So I'll bring her out too. I won't bring that Revolution. She's kind of a beast. She's heavy, but I'll bring my little I'll bring the counselor.
Nice.
If you're looking at doing unarmed combative stuff hand to hand, look at Craig Douglas's ECQC.
Oh yeah.
You have to text me this stuff.
Okay. And then for the listeners, Craig Douglas ECQC, he's going to be in Albuquerque next year. Don't sign up for that class though, because I want there to be some room for Andy, Tim, and I to get in there. And then hit up Steve to talk to his buddy at Scallywag Tactical about what? I'm trying to. He won't accept my friend request.
Crotchety old asshole. I hope that he passes out, and I'm gonna sneak in his room and cut that beard.
Shit.
Man,
Steve doesn't sleep apparently. The dude, it's like 3 a.m. and Steve, I go to pee, and I check my phone, and Steve is live. I mean, I'm kidding.
He's Instagram live right now. He's actually on live right now.
He's a beast, man. I don't know. I don't sleep. I don't sleep and I function. And this dude levels that shit up. It's amazing. Steve's actually donated a class for We the Female. So I think we're going to raffle off a class for We the Female. So I'm a partner, Brownells. I'm grateful Brownells partnered with me. Roy's a friend of mine. And so they donate items to me to raffle off to raise money. You can donate to I'm a nonprofit, it's tax deductible, and people can donate. But being a business owner, and a successful business owner, I understand the value of partnerships and developing and building relationships with companies of products I believe in and philosophies I believe in, because I can't sell it if I don't believe in it. You know what I mean? I can't be that person. But that they also support and believe what I'm doing. And so Brownells will donate. So they Roy sent me a $1,300 loophole spotting scope and a Trigicon RMR. And we raffled those off for Christmas. And I think, Andy, you lost, unfortunately.
I know I lost.
So, but we made just over $2,000.
It was rigged.
On that, which was, totally rigged. Totally rigged. Yeah, because the guy that won the RMR, I'm like, are you?
Because it wasn't me. That's why.
You know, it was. It's the guy that would win the trivia things. And I told him, I said, which is just him quick on the Google. He's an attorney, so he's research-wise, he's quick. But I told him, I said, since you won this, you're giving back the ears and the eyes that you won for me to donate to these women. I have to go help. And I said, of course, I'm kidding. And he was kind enough. He says, no, go ahead. So, but I was totally fucking with him. I didn't mean for him to do that, but he did. But so he won that. And that's cool. But he was, he has donated. He's actually one of my Patreons. So it was fun for him. But sometimes Roy will send me stuff that's been returned, that's been brand new returned, because they have a lifetime return that's never been used. I'm like, Christmas is coming, man. I wonder what we're going to get. That was returned to Brownells for Christmas that we'll be able to raffle off. I can't wait to message and be like, so what's it looking like there? And then Skinny Medic, as I told you, we first started talking to him because I have a guy that does train that Stop the Bleed, because as gun owners, if we want to get people in the gun to be gun owners or be comfortable with it, we can't go in with the gun anymore. We have to find all of these other ways to come in, and Stop the Bleed is fucking great, because that is information not only does everybody should have, you're going to be far more likely to need it for a car accident than a shooting, like probably 50 to 1, right? 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1. So I just so one of my volunteers became an instructor, and then he became an instructor for instructors, and so was going to do that, and then he's a firefighter, and he ended up slipping a disc on a call, and it had to have spine surgery, so he's down. So we have been dead in the water on that for a while, and Dietrich got a hold of me, and he said, hey, we'll do these, instead of you building your own, he says, why don't you just do ours, because ours are done, and they're some of the best in the industry, I think, arguably, and because those getting into that stuff, I know a little bit more obviously than like calibers of, I can't walk in and identify a gun, but I can identify a good tourniquet. And I said, so if are you willing to give me a little bit higher percentage if I do, because it's a write-off for you? And he said sure, and he came back and gave me a number, and then he 3 weeks later we got everything situated, and he ended up making it even higher, which was a surprise, and I wasn't expecting. So I was very grateful for that. So when you purchase from Skinny Medic, you get 15% of your purchase price goes to or is it? I don't think it's 15%. Yeah, because it's an affiliate. It's not a discount code. So yeah, so 15% of the purchase price of any products that you buy from the Skinny Medic. I need to get that code. I don't know what it is. I'm embarrassed. I'll get it to you guys if you can add it later in some way, because I'm not sure what the code is. He sent it to me in a text, and then it was right before Christmas. So 15% of your purchase will go toward We the Female, which is great. And then 77 Solutions EDC is a master craftsman holster maker. He makes all of Katie's holsters. He's made some of Colin Warris holsters and celebrities and stuff. So he does a lot of it's just kind of his art. He has a day job, so they take a while because he makes them all by order, by hand, and then just makes them all. So this is my out of waist for the Truth pistol, and then I have it in the waist for it too. Not that I conceal carry it often, but he surprised me the other day with a code. So when you purchase his stuff, then money will come to that. So I'm going to get all that stuff up. I was blessed that a bunch of those hit at one time. So I'm working on a code for Brownells. We're going to do an affiliate for them. And then Scallywag, I want to hit them up too, because Scallywag's got some cool shit. I'm not a knife girl. I'm not a pokey stabby person. Yeah. I'm not a pokey stabby girl. Knives and stuff scare me, but I mentioned the other day, I'm like, I think I need to come to, I mean, they do beautiful, and their work, it's just beautiful stuff. Yeah. I've come to terms with the fact that I need to become comfortable with something like that. So I think I'm going to start with their daggers, but
going for the big knives right away.
What'd you say?
They're going for the big knives right away.
My daughter she doesn't like guns, but she likes knives, and it's not my thing. So, but I want to see if they're interested, and if they're not, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to shit on it, but they produce the quality of product that I would want attached to what we do. So, they're fun guys. So
yeah, I bought my wife one of those Scallywag daggers for Christmas, because with her job, she can't carry a firearm. It's against policy, but it doesn't say anything about other things. So she carries that Scallywag dagger now, and they're aluminum. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're nice. Super light. Super light, super quality. The scabbard that comes with is solid. I mean, great knives. Scallywag.
And they make trainers too,
Yeah,
so
they do.
So I really like what they're doing, and I hope that they are. And I also like Hackett equipment. Hackett equipment I've been working with a little bit. Hackett makes really nice rifle burritos that are like heavy duty Velcro around that, and they fucking hold your rifle in. I mean, they can hold my Revolution in, but then they backpack, so you can carry them like a backpack. They're cool. I like those. And Argo J told me about those, and I really like them. I have a concealed carry. I should bring this stuff when I do these things. Have them near me. They designed a concealed carry backpack for one. It's a little one, which is nice. Steve suggested a really good improvement to it that I'm going to mention to them. There may or may not be coming a handbag style backpack.
Nice.
With those techniques for stilettos and shotguns.
Nice. Very cool.
With Steve helping me develop it. So, because women will carry these things if they don't look like tack bags.
Yeah.
Fun fact for anybody that's watching this, if you guys really want to get women to start buying your shit, stop making it in fucking baby shit green.
Yeah.
And black. I mean, I'll go black, dark gray, but for reals, hit me up. We'll talk. I'm from the fashion and beauty industry is my background history. Let's talk, because I will help you sell some shit to women. Because you guys are fucking.
What they need to make too is so we see the concealed carry bags pretty often, handbags, purses, whatever the hell they're called, right?
I'm not a fan of that anymore.
They're either Uber. I'm not a fan of off body carry either, but if that's your only option, great. But they make the super tactical ones, right? They make the super country style ones. They need to start designing stuff that look like Coach, Louis, MK, all the ones that all the ladies love to actually carry. Make them actually fashionable, and you'll probably sell the shit out of them. You know what I mean? So that's just my 2 cents on it. But
that's what's coming in 2020 from stilettos and shotguns. So that is so Asphalia, I believe, I might not be pronouncing it right. They make a nice bag. They make a beautiful bag, very Ted Baker, Kate Spade-esque Coach looking leather. They're $300-400, and they're nice, and they make a laptop carry case, and they do nice colors and stuff. Those I like, but they're still more purse-like too. I want something that's going to be a little bit anyway. So I'm gonna play with this, and Steve and I are gonna because he knows somebody that can make them, and I'm willing to put the money in to buy. Because I already started asking a few women I know. I said, if I did, what? And they're like, because they trust me. They're like, fuck yeah, if you designed it. And I said, what would you pay for it? And they were like, oh. And I was like, oh, like I was like way more than I was expecting. So I was like, cool. So they're going to be really surprised when I can come in for less too and do this. So yeah, so stay tuned for that. I'm not a huge fan, or if you're going to do that, I say do it. If it's your only option, obviously I'd rather you have it for real, but you need to train with that as well. Carrying in my, I have a Chanel bag, carrying in my Chanel bag while it looks cool, right? It's very bougie looking, especially with my SIG or my Kimber.
You would have a Kimber in a Chanel bag.
Yeah, but it's a little, it's not, certainly not life-saving practical, at all. But as a secondary, like especially in Seattle, I would like to become more comfortable having a secondary, in the city. And so to carry a little backpack, and this little backpack's great. It's going to be a good carry-on for, carry for like, on a plane without the gun in it. But then it's a nice little, like I could throw little things in it if I go to the market, and install my gun in it. So yeah, so Hackett Equipment, Hackett, they do some really nice stuff. Love the burritos. Those are my favorite thing.
I love burritos too.
Who doesn't love a burrito, right? So yeah, they're my favorite. But they're those rifle burritos. Y'all check those out because those are really nice. I like those. So yeah, we've been talking for like 3 hours.
I was just gonna say, speaking of burritos, I'm gonna go have dinner.
I know. I'm gonna finish
late dinner. Early lunch.
I hope that I kept y'all entertained, and those of you watching, I hope that.
No, you did. I think it started off great, and then it kept on going. I think the everything was awesome. I really liked the discussion on domestic violence, and we might need to do every couple episodes, have a nice public health discussion for folks.
Yeah.
But I would like to give you all the rest of your evening back. I know you're in a different time zone than we are. I think it's a little bit earlier where you are. Maybe I don't know where.
Yeah, it's 9:40 where I'm at. Yeah.
Awesome. Usually we get the East Coasters, and it's like it'd be 1 o'clock in the morning.
1 o'clock, yeah. Well, I would love to be, if you want me on, just obviously let me know ahead of time. But if you want me on every so often to discuss like the women's in this whole thing, I would love to, more than happy to. I think it brings a different perspective in. And I think that particularly a different perspective with threat assessment coming from a woman, because it's a little bit different. And it's not a lot of women are doing it. Like I said, if y'all know women that are doing it like I do, so I'm getting ready to go to this neighborhood. Long story short, they've got a convicted level 3 rapist and attempted murderer moving into their neighborhood. And they went to the city. The city can't do anything about it because it's in unincorporated King County. And they Googled, because they had they were just at ends. They had no resources. Nobody could help them. The city police didn't tell him he was coming. The county was supposed to. In fact, I sent her an email today to follow up to find out where she's at. Super frustrating. And she didn't even give me her name initially because she was scared, because she didn't want the women didn't want him to know who they were. It was awful, awful. She Googled and found me. And I said, well, you kind of couldn't have found the better person. Like, I'm literally the person you need for this, because I'm going to teach them. So she said, do you know anybody that teaches handgun or whatever? And I said, well, I can get you somebody. I said, but I'm going to teach you how not to need it to begin with. I said, and I am actually trained to do threat assessment. So I can come into your neighborhoods, literally go through the neighborhood itself and do a threat assessment on your neighborhood. But then I can do it for your homes, for those interested in wanting. And I could tell you where, because people think you need these expensive security systems. You don't. You need maybe 2-3 cameras, depending on how your house is set up, in the right spots and how the system is set up. So, and your lighting. So people don't need thousands of dollars and all this ADT bullshit. You just need to have the right person look to be able to show you where you're blind, all that kind of stuff. So she went, oh, you can do, I'm like, yes. So I'm headed out to this area to go help these ladies do that. So, and I'm looking at it from a woman's eyes and a mother's eyes and what that means, right? Because it means something different to them. Some of the basics are going to be the same shit, you know what I mean? But yeah. So, and then I was grateful enough that there were people, some guy, I've got his name on my thing, has donated ammo. So I've got ammo to take, because that's one of the more expensive things to train them with. And then for the women that aren't, this is what Andy, when he donated for this, because I think you probably listened to one of these, Andy, was part of that conversation, right? Part of the, whatever they need, but the women that will not be able to afford their concealed carry permit, we, the female, we're going to buy their permit for them after they get trained. Right. So, because I if they want to be armed, and it may be enough that they can own buy a gun, right? And with the permit on top of it, and I'd rather them have the permit before they buy the gun, just because I think that's a responsible thing to do. Do you need to? No, but it's just, sometimes it used to be that it's easier because you didn't have to go through the waiting period for a pistol. Now it doesn't matter in the state, but we want to be able to do that for them and offer them that concealed carry permit. So that is what we're doing. So when you donate to We the Female, you're helping arm the women with education, confidence, and self-defense.
That's awesome. And go to wethefemale.net. On Instagram, all things social media, stilettos and shotguns. We appreciate you guys tuning in and hanging out with us this evening. Shoot us any questions or comments that you have. If you need help, reach out, talk to somebody, let somebody help you out. Remember,
if you're struggling emotionally and you can't go anywhere else, I'm only an asshole in real life. I'm not really, I'm only an asshole on podcasts. I'm not an asshole in real life. So if you feel like I'm the one, or Andy, or Jeremy, although I don't have my glasses on and looking at your thing here, it looks like it says Johnny Gill, and I got to giggle a minute ago. Another age test.
Nice.
So, but yeah, we're here to help you. We have resources, and you're not alone. So make sure that you get some help.
It's your life. It's your safety and protection. It's your responsibility. You guys stay safe, and we'll see you next week.